Chapter 233. This world is in fear and submission. The voice of the entire world accurately flowed into Yun Nuoxing's ears, making him feel a sense of absurdity. It was as if even the world was kneeling before this girl in front of him, and her orders had to be obeyed. Boom! As soon as this aura spread out, Yun Nuoxing heard a dull sound coming from the ground. Then, the ground shook even more violently, as if there was an earthquake. His vision swayed continuously, and he hurriedly crouched down. Then, he saw the ground around him slowly rising. No, to be more precise, the ground they were standing on was slowly sinking like a funnel. The changes in the ground made Yun Nuoxing slightly happy. Just as he was about to say something, his gaze caught the cold light in Ziye's eyes. That was the temperament of a superior person, and he could not help but shrink his head back. He obediently stayed at the side and waited quietly, not daring to say a word. The ground shook for a few minutes before it finally stopped. After waiting for another 2 minutes without seeing any changes, Ziyi retracted his aura. He turned around and saw Yun Nuoxing hugging her legs and curling up into a ball on the ground. He was stunned for a moment before he sneered. "What are you doing? It's all because you scared me." Yun Nuoxing averted his gaze and muttered. He grabbed Ziye's jade-like hand and pulled himself up with a little force. He patted his butt and asked, "What was that just now? Divine right?" Ziyi smiled faintly. You can understand it as a kind of energy that only rebirth realm experts possess. As you can see, it can command everything in the world. Furthermore, it can be used to suppress others. However, I'm not a god, so I can't really use my divine right. I'm just borrowing the power of the divine flame to barely use it. Otherwise, Little Star would have to kneel down before the swirling zither reacted. When a god's divine right is released, everything in the world will have to bow down and worship it. Z smiled mischievously after saying that. You still have the nerve to say that. You didn't even pay attention and released it indiscriminately. Yun Nuoxing grumbled unhappily. I'm sorry. What's wrong with such a big place? I can't control a small place. Z stuck out her tongue and hugged his arm with her jade-like hands. She smiled and said, "Don't be angry, big brother." Upon hearing this, Yun Nuoxing shuddered violently and goosebumps appeared all over his body. That last big brother was so sweet that he was sick of it. Well, let's stop joking. Seeing his flushed cheeks, Z laughed proudly and let go of his hand. Looking at the slightly brightly lit area, he looked ahead and said with a smile, "Although it's open, we can't go in today. There aren't enough people." His face was still a little red. The first thing he did when he came back to his senses was to follow her gaze. Then his eyes widened and he was stunned. This was an underground cavern. The vast underground world didn't seem dark at all. On the mountain wall in front of them, there was a huge black door that was tens of thousands of feet tall embedded in the stone wall. On the huge black door, there were complicated red patterns protruding out. They looked like a group of demons dancing wildly, but also like 100 flowers blooming. These patterns were grouped together on the circular plate in the middle. It also looked like a huge dragon hugging a dragon pearl. The complicated mural was dazzling to look at. On the circular plate in the middle, 2 yin and yang fish were entangled together, forming an 8 trigrams diagram. However, the yin fish's eyes were empty. They were missing a piece, an incomplete 8 trigrams diagram. The sunlight shone down and formed a bright pillar of light. On the stone platform that they landed on, Yun Nuoxing looked from afar and saw that the circular plate in the middle was missing a piece. There wasn't a hint of white in the black. It was a very obvious flaw. Missing your head. Z rolled her eyes at him. He was baffled and didn't understand what he said wrong. The yin fish's eyes aren't missing. That's a key. The key to opening this door. Z said indifferently as she looked at the door with her purple eyes. It's hidden. Yun Nuoxing quickly reacted. She hurriedly opened her evil spirit eye and changed her line of sight. A blurry white shadow appeared in her line of sight. It was floating in front of the door. 3 thin white pillars of light shot down from the white bead, forming a triangle that connected the 3 crystals on the ground. However, before Yun Nuoxing could see clearly, Ziyi walked towards the huge door with his hands behind his back. She hurriedly jumped down from the stone platform and followed him. How do we open it? Standing in front of the huge black door, Yun Nuoxing slowly turned her head back. She looked at Ziyi, who was standing beside her, and asked, "Just put the fish's eyes back in place. However, we'll need 3 people to do it." Pointing at the 3 white crystals on the ground, Ziyi said, "Energy crystals. The person who placed them here used these 3 crystals to lock the fish's eyes here. As long as we block the energy from the crystals, we'll be able to put the eyes back in place. We should be able to open the door." "I don't know." Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing rolled her eyes. She looked at the 3 crystals that were far away from each other. Just as she was about to take out her weapon, Ziyi grabbed her hand. She looked at him with an expression that said, "Are you stupid?" making her a little depressed. Energy crystals can be attached to items with energy to increase the output of energy. If you throw your weapon over, won't you be strengthening the sealing ability of the crystals? Ziyi sighed and said unhappily, "Then what do we do? Go back and call Xian and the others over?" Yun Nuoxing laughed dryly, then frowned and said, "There's no other way. This energy can only be blocked with the body. If you use anything else, it will increase the output of energy." Ziyi reached out and touched the white energy beam lightly. Seeing the light focused on her slender fingers, she nodded and smiled at him. "It's fine. Looking at this designer, it doesn't look like he's setting up some kind of trap. At the very least, isn't the first checkpoint very easy to pass? I don't think there's any danger inside, right? I feel that rather than saying this place is hidden, it's better to say that the person purposely set up this trap and is waiting for a specific person to open it." "A specific person?" Yun Nuoxing was stunned. "I don't know. It's just a guess." Ziyi stuck out her tongue cutely. Yun Nuoxing, "Well, let's leave it at that for today. There's no point in staying here. If you want to go in, you'll have to call Xian and the others over." Ziyi waved her hand. Taking advantage of the fact that Yun Nuoxing wasn't paying attention, she turned back into her flame form and entered Yun Nuoxing's body. "All right." Yun Nuoxing nodded helplessly. She jumped back and returned to the stone platform. Then, she spread her wings and flew toward the exit. After flying out of the hole, Yun Nuoxing turned around and looked at the stair-like ground behind her. She whistled and looked at the ice-blue crescent moon hanging in the sky. She couldn't help but be stunned. She took a moment to determine the direction and hurriedly flew toward the direction of the village. Before they knew it, it was already nighttime. Any longer and they would be worried. In the village, Uncle Lu and Uncle Ma were pacing back and forth in front of the stone house. They glanced at the sky in the west from time to time. The former couldn't help but sigh and hesitate in front of the door with his hands behind his back. After a long while, the 2 of them looked at each other and stomped their feet anxiously. Just as they were about to lead the 2 horses out, a dazzling golden light appeared in the distant sky. In just a few blinks of an eye, it appeared in front of them. At the same time, a hearty chuckle sounded. "Uncle Lu, Uncle Ma, it's already so late. Why aren't you sleeping? Hurry up and go in. It's quite cold outside at night." Yun Nuoxing scratched her head. She knew that they were waiting for her and felt a little embarrassed. "You're finally back. Did you go to that place?" Seeing her return, the 2 of them immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Uncle Lu frowned slightly and couldn't help but ask. Yun Nuoxing was stunned. She stuck out her tongue and then answered honestly, "I went there once. I was a little curious." Hearing this, Uncle Lu jumped up anxiously and hurriedly said, "You mustn't go there again. Didn't I tell you that it's very dangerous? It's not a good place. If you keep appearing there, it's very easy for something to happen." "What kind of place is that?" Yun Nuoxing asked as the image of the door appeared in her mind. She was very curious and wanted to know these questions. "All right, I'll tell you. Otherwise, you'll still have to go there and explore." Uncle Lu sighed helplessly. "Please tell me slowly." Seeing that there was hope, Yun Nuoxing's eyes lit up. She hit it again before she was discovered. Even Uncle Ma on the side pricked up his ears. It seemed that he was also very curious about this matter. Uncle Lu crossed his palms and rubbed them gently, as if he was sorting out his thoughts. After a while, he said, that place was discovered by the ancestors of the Liu family. The Heaven Pulse Master of the past warned the descendants not to go there. He said that the place was a relic of the gods, and many things were buried there. However, he didn't know what was inside. There was a saying that was passed down. Yin and yang return, heaven and earth cage, smoke and dust cover. The past appears, the gods end, the gods end, the gods reign. In the end, when you were drunk, you accidentally told others about this. That young traveler disappeared. Uncle Ma on the side stroked his beard and said, that was an accident. What can I do? Hearing this, Uncle Lu's old face showed a trace of shame. He continued, there are indeed some treasures in the relic of the gods. I think there should be divine grade Xian crystals. Otherwise, the ancestors wouldn't have paid so much attention to it. But you mustn't go there. Before Uncle Lu finished speaking, Yin Nuashing and Uncle Ma spat out a mouthful of water at the same time. Divine grade Xian crystals. Yin Nuashing awkwardly wiped the corners of her mouth with the back of her hand. Her face twitched hard. Divine grade Xian crystals could really be said to be priceless. It was said that they contained unlimited energy. Every time a divine grade Xian crystal appeared, the entire divine realm would shake violently. All the forces would raise a sky-high price and try to get it at all costs. Bloody battles had happened before for a fist-sized divine grade Xian crystal. However, after being shocked for a moment, he calmed down. He didn't know much about the mythological era. It should be very different from now, when the world was in turmoil. It shouldn't be impossible for something like divine grade Xian crystals to appear. Maybe in that era, it was even sold at street stalls. The things sealed inside were all arranged by that god. Even this place was decided by him. I don't know what will be revealed inside, but one thing is for sure. There should be danger there. After Uncle Lu finished speaking, he sighed and looked at the sky in the west. His eyes were a little complicated. Yin Nuashing spread out her hands. She was determined to go to the relic of the gods. They were already at the door. How could she not go? Chapter 234. After chatting with Elder Lu for a while, Yin Nuashing said good night and slowly walked into the stone house. Seeing him come back, Xian threw the book in her hand onto the bed and jumped up a little nervously. She jumped at his side and asked anxiously, Xing, are you okay? Brother, are you okay? At the same time, Ming also jumped into Yin Nuashing's arms and touched his face in a fluster as he asked nervously, it's not like I went to hell for a stroll. As soon as he opened the door, 2 fragrant winds blew in front of him, and then a petite body threw itself into his arms. However, in the blink of an eye, he met a pair of beautiful and moving eyes. Yin Nuashing laughed bitterly. Why did it make him feel like he had gone to some kind of evil place? Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm really fine. Patting Ming Ming's head, Yin Nuashing revealed a reassuring smile. However, Xian was worried and took a few more glances. When he saw that Ming Ming really didn't seem to have any problems, he let out a slight sigh of relief. You went out for half a day. Ming Ming and I were worried that something might have happened to you. Xian rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. Yes, something did happen. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to come back tonight. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing nodded in agreement. His frightening words made the two of them nervous again. They grabbed him and looked him up and down. The only thing they wanted to do was to take off his clothes. Seeing this, Yin Nuashing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't say anything wrong. It was just that the way they interpreted it was different. He had no choice but to quickly explain what happened. Don't scare people like that. Hearing the explanation, Xian sighed in relief again. She raised her slender eyebrows and glared fiercely at Yin Nuashing, who was smiling embarrassedly. She shook her head helplessly. Okay, I was wrong. After tidying up his messy clothes, Yin Nuashing stuck out his tongue. Suddenly, he thought of something and his face turned red. He coughed dryly and stammered, Xian, can you, yes, no problem. Although she didn't hear what Yin Nuashing said, she was smart enough to know what he wanted to say at this time. He probably wanted her to go down with him and open the door to the god's historical site. But however, I have a condition. Seeing Yin Nuashing heave a sigh of relief, Xian smiled. Her rosy lips curled into a charming arc, and Mei Mao, who narrowed her eyes, looked a little sly. Hmm? What are your conditions? Yun Nuoxing raised her eyebrows, crossed her arms, and smiled. After the door opened, Xian chuckled. You going in too? Before she could finish, Yun Nuoxing interrupted her. The familiar conversation made him laugh helplessly. He had planned to do so anyway. How did you know? Having her line stolen, Xian's pretty face turned red. Seeing him snickering, her face turned even redder. She was indeed worried that Yun Nuoxing would throw her back after opening the door, saying that it was dangerous. Who knows if there are any similar mechanisms behind it? It's not a big deal to bring you along. It's just one more person. Yun Nuoxing spread his hands and sighed. Brother, there's still me. Hearing the two talking and not talking about her, Ming became a little anxious. She was also worried that she would be left behind in the village. Okay, I'll bring you along too, little follower. Yun Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He rudely scratched Ming's head with his palm, causing her to pout and mumble. Xian couldn't help but laugh. The next morning, when the first ray of sunlight broke the silence of the night sky, the door of a stone house in the village opened quietly. Then, two dark shadows crept out in the dark. The one walking in front was even tiptoeing. When a shadow behind walked out, they turned around and quietly closed the door. Their sneaky appearance was a little funny. Are you still going there? Just as the two dark shadows closed the door and were about to sneak out, an old and helpless voice suddenly sounded from behind them. The two dark shadows were startled and almost jumped up. Uncle Lu, you're up so early. The dark shadow scratched his head and laughed awkwardly. Judging from this voice, it was naturally Yun Nuoxing. He planned to sneak to the god's historical remains in the early morning before anyone woke up. He didn't expect to be discovered. He turned around awkwardly. With the help of the ray of sunlight, he could clearly see that a chair had appeared in the empty space behind him at some point in time. The person sitting on the chair was Uncle Lu. However, looking at the old man's tired appearance and his hair covered in frost, he seemed to have been waiting here for a long time. Sigh. Uncle Lu sighed heavily and slapped his thigh in annoyance. He said regretfully, If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have let you see that picture. Yun Nuoxing stuck out his tongue and didn't have the nerve to continue the conversation. He still insisted on going after other people's advice. He wouldn't be able to explain himself if he was discovered. Uncle Lu glanced at Yun Nuoxing and knew that he couldn't stop them no matter what he did. He sighed and said, Wait a moment. After saying that, he didn't wait for Yun Nuoxing's reply and walked straight into the stone house. After a few minutes, he walked out with a wooden box the size of a basin. The wooden box was covered in scratches and gave off an ancient aura. It seemed to have been there for a long time. Even the wood showed signs of decay. This is? Seeing him take out a box, Yun Nuoxing looked puzzled. He didn't know what it was. It was left behind by my ancestor. He was the only person who went in and came back alive. In the end, he brought out this thing. I don't know what it is either. I haven't opened it before. Uncle Lu sighed and rubbed the wooden box with nostalgia. After a while, he placed the wooden box on the stone table. He gently opened the box with his wrinkled hands. Suddenly, a rotten aura came out. He didn't know how many years it had been sealed. Beads? Yun Nuoxing saw two round beads that were a little bigger than a fist in the box. One was black and the other was white. They didn't have any luster. My ancestor took these out from the ruins of the gods. Maybe they can help you if you go in. Uncle Lu nodded. Yun Nuoxing gently picked up the two round beads and put them on his hand. He didn't see anything special about them. They were just ordinary round beads. They didn't even have any energy. However, he still put them into the pendant solemnly. Since they were items from the ruins of the gods, they should be special. They might save his life in an emergency. Little brother, when are you coming back? In the end, Uncle Lu sent them to the entrance of the village. Looking at his confident expression, he suddenly thought of the traveler he had seen before. That day, he had also sent him out of the village like this. The latter had the same expression, but he had never seen that very young traveler come back. Well, I'll come back when the trip to the ruins is over. Yun Nuoxing thought and smiled. Don't worry, I'll be fine. taking Ziyin and the other two with him. He soared into the air and waved his hand behind him. His body trembled and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only Uncle Lu was still standing at the entrance of the village. Looking in the direction they had left, he sighed. Is this the ruins of the gods? In front of the enormous black door, Ziyin raised her head and looked at the enormous door. Her beautiful eyes revealed a curious expression. A moment later, she hugged Ming Ming a little tighter and said to her little head that was swaying around, "Later when you go in, don't touch anything. There are many mechanisms inside." Okay. Ming nodded obediently. Okay, the barrier is broken. Get ready to open the door. In front of them, Yin Nuoxing clapped his hands and looked at the white beads that gradually appeared. His expression was a little strange. Perhaps it was just as I said. This god was waiting for someone to open the ruins. He didn't want to completely seal it. Otherwise, the key barrier to open the door wouldn't have been broken so easily. Energy crystals. Seeing the gradually appearing eyes of the Yin fish and the 3 crystals connected to the ground, Ziyin looked at them with some surprise. She had an alchemist in her family, so she knew a little about these things. The process of opening the door was much simpler than Yun Nuoxing imagined. 3 people stood at the positions of the 3 crystals and blocked the 3 rays of light with their bodies. It was so simple that it made one's hair stand on end. However, the 3rd person was Ming. Yin Nuoxing called Zai a few times in her heart. Seeing that she didn't respond at all, she had no choice but to let Ming be the 3rd person. The energy rays were blocked by 3 hands. The 3 energy crystals stopped releasing energy. When the rays of light were blocked, the Yin fish's eyes trembled and slowly flew toward the missing part of the Yin fish. Buzz! The white beads were embedded in the circular plate at the center of the black door. Then, the 8 trigrams in the middle started to spin rapidly. 2 rays of energy shot out from the yin-yang fish and spread around half of the stone door, spreading out like a net. The painting in the middle that looked like a giant dragon suddenly came to life and rushed out of the stone door. It opened its blood-red eyes and roared at Yin Nuoxing and the others. Roar! The sudden change stunned Yin Nuoxing for a moment. The moment he reacted, he suddenly turned his gaze and saw the roaring dragon coming over. He felt the energy contained in this roar, and all the hair on his body stood on end. He quickly took out his halberd and grabbed it with his right hand. Almost as if it was a conditioned reflex, he slashed at the roar that had turned into a sound wave that rushed over. The heavenly halberd drew a perfect crescent arc, but it was as easy as cutting through the air. It didn't touch anything. There was no energy explosion. There was no ripple spreading out. The sound wave also suddenly dissipated in the air like a bubble. She suddenly came back to her senses, but realized that nothing had happened. She held the halberd in her hand and was sweating profusely. The back of her robe was stuck to her body, and she felt uncomfortable just by moving her arms. What's going on? Stars! Seeing that he suddenly took out his halberd and slashed at the air, Ziyin looked at him in confusion. She didn't know what happened. She didn't see anything just now. It's nothing. Yin Nuoxing shook her head and touched her forehead. Her entire hand was wet. She couldn't help but laugh bitterly. She said in her heart, Zai, what was that just now? Spiritual pressure. Your soul power and spiritual power are too strong. That's why you sensed it. But it's nothing serious. Don't worry, calm down. Zai comforted her softly. He paused for a moment and said solemnly, I sensed a very ancient aura in the ruins. This place has existed for at least 80 eras. I sensed the aura of 4 reincarnations, 80 eras. The corners of her eyes twitched. Looking at the giant door that was slowly opening, Yin Nuoxing took in a cold breath. However, she wasn't too shocked. The mythological era started from the birth of the Great Yuan realm. It lasted for 40 years before it switched to the next era. In other words, it was more than 80 years before the end of the era. The timing matched well. It's just that it's been so long. Is there really anything left inside? Chapter 235. Boom! The giant black door shrank into the mountain wall and slowly stopped with a dull sound. The entire underground world trembled with this sound. One could only imagine how heavy this door was. To be honest, I'm still a little resistant to the underground world. Yin Nuashing opened his mouth wide and touched his face. The howling cold wind blew past him like a storm, stirring up layers of sand and dust. Seeing this familiar scene, he said with a little gloominess. Xian shrugged. Their trip to the Earth Grotto was indeed a little dangerous, and they were all a little traumatized. Yin Nuashing waited until the bone-chilling wind gradually weakened until it finally disappeared. He picked up Ming and led the two of them slowly into the glowing tunnel. However, he didn't put away the halberd in his hand. The few of them slowly walked forward. After walking for about 10 miles, they saw that the stone walls were very smooth and intact. There were no traces of history at all. It made them wonder if this place had really existed for such a long time. There's nothing in this huge ruins of the gods. Yin Nuashing finally couldn't help but grumble after walking for about 5 miles. His voice was filled with resentment. Could it be that we're going in the wrong direction? Xian said. She thought about the tunnel they saw in the Earth Grotto that was full of mirrors. She looked around and gently pressed her hand against the stone wall. There's no other path here. The walls are ridiculously hard. It shouldn't be the case. Yin Nuashing shook his head when he saw her actions. He had just poked the wall with his halberd, but he didn't leave any marks on it. The fact that even a divine weapon couldn't scratch the wall was enough to show how strong its defense was. Well, be patient. Let's walk a little longer. I think there should be something left behind here. It's not some precious divine weapon, nor is it some divine weapon. It's more like, as I said softly, she didn't say anything in the end. Yin Nuashing felt like his heart was being scratched by a cat. More like what? Yin Nuashing couldn't help but ask after waiting for a while. I don't know. Zi laughed mischievously. Hearing this laughter, rows of black lines drooped down from Yin Nuashing's forehead, and his face twitched twice. I don't know how you came to the conclusion that there are no weapons inside. It's an intuition. As if he could sense Yin Nuashing's disdain, Zi snorted and mimicked him. He brought out his words and made him speechless. You're twisting words and forcing logic. I'm actually speechless. Thanks for the compliment. Although he was a little reluctant, Yin Nuashing still trusted Ziyi very much. He followed her words and continued walking forward. He also felt that there was still a long way to go. How could he face himself if he returned empty-handed after coming all the way here? The god of the gods seemed to want to record something here, but there was only a palace, so it was obvious that he couldn't see anything. Seeing the carvings on the right side of the mountain wall, Yin Nuashing thought for a moment and quickly turned his head to the other side. But after a moment, he turned back with a smile. There was nothing on the left side of the mountain wall. He just subconsciously thought that there would be some kind of explanation behind it. I don't know how to look at paintings. Yin Nuashing scratched his head and said with a little distress. Then let me look at it. Hearing this, Ziyin giggled. Ignoring his awkward expression, she walked forward a bit, stretched her jade-like neck, and carefully examined the mural. Brother is stupid. Seeing this, Ming, who was in his arms, couldn't help but laugh. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Hearing that even Ming was making fun of him, Yin Nuashing was a little anxious, but after a moment, he laughed bitterly and said nothing. After looking carefully for a while, Xian shook her head and sighed. A palace from the mythological era? It should belong to some force. There's a little information left, so I can't see much. There's no hurry, since this mural was left behind. Hearing the sigh, Yin Nuashing smiled and looked at the distant passage that led to an unknown place and said, There must be other murals. Let's go. Hearing this, Xian nodded, turned around, and jogged to Yin Nuashing's side and followed him forward. Just as Yin Nuashing expected, after walking for about 100 feet, they arrived in front of the second mural. It was a flat world drawn on it. It was smoking and looked a little dilapidated, as if it had just been destroyed. 2 small palaces stood at the 2 ends of the flat world. There were hundreds of figures floating around them, as if they were facing each other from a distance. That's the realm of the gods? Yin Nuashing spat out in shock. Everyone knew that the realm of the gods was a flat world. It should be. From what little memory I've left, I only know that in the 8 elemental realms, only the realm of the gods is like this flat world. The others are not like this, Ziyi replied. After a moment, his voice suddenly changed and was tinged with some doubt. But this is the realm of the gods. Those 2 palaces can't be. The low murmur was so soft that Yin Nuoxing couldn't hear it clearly. After Xian finished looking, she frowned slightly and didn't say anything. She just pulled Yin Nuoxing and ran, impatient to see the next mural. Yin Nuoxing was a little puzzled, but he didn't say anything. He directly put his arm around Xian's weak shoulder, and the light element in his body surged, turning into a golden light, and flew forward at high speed. The third mural was a little chaotic. It depicted a battle. Thousands of people flew in the sky, surrounding a palace and fighting. The images of the people on the mural were very clearly depicted. Those expressions seemed to be roaring, hissing, grinding teeth, and sucking blood. It seemed to bring them back to the scene of the battle. It seemed that there really was the sound of weapons clashing around them, the sound of thousands of people roaring, the rumbling of the great Tao, space shattering, and the whole world collapsing and being destroyed. That palace seems to be the same as the one on the right of the second mural, Xian said after thinking for a while staring at the palace with rapt attention. Yin Nuoxing nodded. This mural was very vivid. Everyone's faces were completely depicted. Just thinking about it made them feel as if they were there. Without saying anything else, the 2 of them rushed to the next mural without stopping. There was no more chaos. The earth was cracked, corpses were everywhere, and countless abysses spread out like a spiderweb. Blood converged into a river, and a person whose appearance couldn't be seen clearly was standing on a small mountain of corpses. 7 rings were floating behind him. Although the ground was full of corpses, there were still many people fighting and killing in the sky. This person's appearance couldn't be seen clearly no matter how they looked at it. They didn't know if his appearance was deliberately covered up. In the next mural, a group of people appeared out of nowhere. The blurry figure was stabbed into the ground by a spear. Although his appearance couldn't be seen clearly, Yin Nuoxing felt that he seemed to be laughing loudly. Then, a monstrous black fog curled up and enveloped the group of people who suddenly appeared and were still fighting in the sky. That's it. Seeing a cloud of black fog on the mural, Yin Nuoxing was stunned and a little puzzled. It's the result of the black fog from the previous mural. Xian looked seriously for a long time and said with uncertainty. The next mural switched to another palace. In the palace hall, a person stood in front of the throne. This was the second person whose appearance couldn't be seen clearly in the mural. Behind him, a vast black fog completely surrounded the palace hall. The person who was stabbed into the ground by a spear was now holding the spear and pointing it at the figure in front of the throne. The person in front of the throne turned around. Her slender hand held a huge sword and rushed towards the person. The person also brought the cloud of black fog behind him and fiercely met the attack. It's a woman? Looking at the slender, jade-like hand, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. In the last few murals, the woman's body was covered in blood. Hundreds of balls of light floated around her and fused into her body. She raised her head and screamed. Resplendent light gushed out from her body like a star. In the last moment, she perished together with the man. As for the black fog, it didn't reveal its true appearance from beginning to end, but it also collapsed and was destroyed. She forced the god to self-destruct. I really don't know how powerful her opponent was. After looking at the last mural, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but shake her head and sigh. I have a rough idea of the meaning of these murals when they are connected. Is this the reason for the end of the mythological era? 10,000 gods appear, heaven and earth cry, space-time collapse, gods fall, waiting for a new life, darkness descends. After carefully looking at the last mural, the attentive Xian recalled a sentence she had seen in an ancient book and softly read it out. The fall of the gods, the advent of darkness. Yin Nuoxing repeated. The era after the mythological era was the Age of Darkness. It was a period of turmoil after the upheaval of heaven and earth. After the extinction of the first great deity, the Yuan realm lost its protection, causing the entire Yuan realm to be in a state of extreme panic. This kind of dark turmoil only recovered after a great reincarnation. However, no one knew which deity was responsible for that inexplicable protection. After all, there was still no sign of the first deity. That sentence, as well as the current understanding of the mythological era, had been deduced by the powerful seers of ancient times through various means. As for whether it was true or not, no one could say for sure. But surprisingly, no one had ever come forward to question it. There are some words on it, but I can't understand them. They should be words left behind from the mythological era. Xian raised her head and pointed at the top of the mural with her slender finger. After looking at it for a while, she shook her head helplessly. Ancient words? I haven't studied them before. Look. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing pouted and looked over curiously. She was about to say, I can't understand it either, but when she saw the words, she was stunned and the words came out of her mouth uncontrollably. Dusk of the Gods. Chapter 236. Twilight of the Gods. As soon as these words came out of his mouth, Yin Nuoxing felt that something was wrong. As soon as he lowered his head, he saw Xian staring at him in astonishment. He was also stunned. Xing, do you recognize these words? Xian was shocked to see him read the line of words in an instant after seeing it. Apart from some extremely ancient books that recorded the words of the mythological era, the rest only existed in ruins like this. It was very difficult to come into contact with them in other places. Even if someone saw it, they might not necessarily understand it. But now, hearing him speak ancient words in modern language without any difficulty, how could he not be surprised? It must be known that everything about the mythological era had basically disappeared. All knowledge of the mythological era, including Xian's guess that these words might be from the mythological era, were all restored or simulated by the divination masters. They might not be true. You recognize it, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Is it really the words of the mythological era? Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing looked at Xian inexplicably, touched his cheek, and asked suspiciously, It should be. I've never seen such words before. Hearing his doubtful voice, Xian quickly waved his hand, then glanced at the line of words again, and shook his head with certainty. Strange. Yin Nuoxing nodded and glanced at the line of words. He still didn't see anything wrong with it. He looked at the words Twilight of the Gods, written vertically, and didn't feel that there was anything wrong. After all, he recognized these words. Naturally, he couldn't understand how people who didn't recognize these words would feel when they saw it. I'm sure I haven't studied ancient languages, but I also recognize these words. Seeing Xian's puzzled look, Yin Nuoxing was also a little puzzled. The two looked at the huge mural and were silent for a long time. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little dull. Forget it. I'll just ignore it. I'll just take it that I've unintentionally maxed out my ancient language talent. Instead of worrying about these things that can't be explored, let's take a look at that thing first. After a while, Yin Nuoxing suddenly laughed and broke the frozen atmosphere. Then, she looked at the passage ahead and fixed her gaze on a circular platform. There was a book there, and it was surrounded by many fine black rays of light. Its appearance here seemed a little out of place. Yeah, that's true. Xian nodded in agreement. She had noticed the book floating in the air a long time ago, but she didn't pay attention to it because she was studying the murals. Now that Zhang Xian mentioned it, she was curious. He slowly walked forward and looked at the book that was as long as 2 palms. The black-edged book was only 100 or so pages thick. The cover was made of yellowed parchment, giving off a sense of history. On the surface of the book, there was a lifelike picture of a scepter. At the tip of the scepter was a crystal wrapped in 6 overlapping wings. The color of the crystal could not be seen. This scepter. Zai was surprised when he saw the scepter. The sudden sound startled Yin Nuoxing. He calmed down a moment later and hurriedly asked, What's wrong with this scepter? After saying that, he also looked at the scepter carefully, trying to see if there was anything strange about it. The scepter represents the supreme, divine authority of a deity. It is a kind of symbol equivalent to a kind of incarnation. Moreover, not all deities have a scepter. Only a generation's master god can have a scepter. The owner who left behind this book should be one of the master gods of the first generation. Z hesitated for a moment before slowly speaking in a grave voice. Hearing this, Nuashing felt dizzy. Although he knew that this god's relic was related to a god from the mythological era, he did not expect this god to be a first generation's overgod, and an overgod at that. It was common knowledge that there were many types of inherited gods. Just the 9 elements alone were divided into 9 types. Among these types, there was the saying main god and branch god. Although there was only a difference of 1 word, the difference was not small at all. In the same generation, an overgod's divine authority could suppress a branch god. I'm a little curious. Quickly flip it open and see what's written. Seeing that Nuashing did not move, as I could not help but urge him. Hearing this, Nuashing shrugged. He did not delay and directly reached out his hand. However, before his hand could touch the ancient book, just as it reached the outer layer of the barrier, the latter automatically flipped open. The sound of flipping pages attracted the attention of several people. They quickly focused their attention and stared at the flipping pages with their eyes wide open. There were not many pages in the ancient book. Moreover, Nuashing caught a glimpse of the first few pages that were flipped open. There was nothing recorded on them. After flipping 4 or 5 pages, the page gently stopped, revealing 2 pages with graceful handwriting. They also turned their attention to the first line on the left and slowly read it. No, I still can't read the words of the mythological era. Xian shook his head helplessly at the first glance. The words seemed to be dancing, and he could not understand what was written at all. Then, he looked at Nuashing a little aggrievedly, as if asking him to read it out. Seeing this, Nuashing smiled slightly and slowly read it. At the end of the 39th era, 2 or 3 years away from the new era, outside the window, it was drizzling, leaving slender streaks on the window. The sky in the distance seemed a little hazy. The world was in turmoil. In the past, when I wandered in the realm of the gods, I saw a peaceful scene. Everyone was still immersed in the world they lived in, completely unaware that other worlds were already filled with the smell of war. I once thought that if I could live a peaceful life in a peaceful world, peacefully watching the sunrise and sunset, moving in sync with time, working at sunrise and resting at sunset, and having a lover by my side as we slowly grow old together, this kind of ordinary life could be considered a kind of happiness and peace, right? However, my world is slowly moving toward its end. Their world is only between themselves. Their lives, their knowledge, are the entire world. As for me, us, our world encompasses their world. I have long since stopped thinking about my so-called future. When dusk came, I saw a pair of old people sitting peacefully on the roof, looking at them smiling as they watched the sunset. The peaceful atmosphere made me unconsciously quiet down. I stopped and looked at the sinking fireball. This moment was indeed beautiful. The peace and tranquility calmed my anxiety a lot. I turned around and flew toward the starry sky. The other ancient planets in the starry sky were also peaceful scenes. In a small town, a family was holding a wedding banquet. I went over. Although no one knew me, they warmly welcomed me. Perhaps they treated me as a neighbor? Looking at the big hall, everyone was so happy. I didn't want to spread my negative emotions. So, I quietly walked to a small yard nearby. Strolling through the streets and alleys, even the beggars were drinking. There was still half a bottle of wine lying in a wine bottle. I walked over and gently left him a few gold coins. I didn't want to disturb his sweet dream. Then, I realized that a new year seemed to have begun again. Time, has it been so long? In the mortal world, there seemed to be a festival. Every house was decorated with lanterns and streamers. Red lanterns hung high under the eaves. The night was also hazy. The big city far away was covered by a sea of lights. The flames in the sky bloomed like flowers. The ear-piercing noise made my heart beat faster. I seemed to hear 1 or 2 loudspeakers from afar. I didn't know what they were urging. The street was so spacious, but it was filled with people. My attire didn't fit in. However, no one had time to look at me. They lived in their own world. How could they spare a glance at people who had nothing to do with them? I hid in the sea of people, quietly moving through other people's worlds without leaving any trace. There was the smell of fireworks on the street. Many people were carrying baskets of gold paper, chicken, and barbecued meat. According to this world, it seemed to be called worshiping God, right? The narrow street was filled with paper money, incense, and divine clothes. There were also people standing on the side, waving their hands. I looked at the mountain in the distance and walked over. The mountain was filled with the smell of fireworks. The temple was full of fireworks. Everyone came in, put 3 sticks of incense, put their hands together, bowed 3 times, and then walked out. I looked at the statue in the temple and saw that everyone who came in had put 3 sticks of incense. I ran to the side and bought 3 sticks of incense and stuck them into the huge incense burner. Looking down from the tower at the top of the mountain, I can see people struggling to climb up the narrow stairs. On the slope, there are people constantly reaching the platform at the waist of the mountain. They are patting their chests and panting. Looking at the happy families, I don't know why, but I feel a little sad. Looking down at the land covered by lights, I sighed and disappeared from this happy world. I returned to the God realm. In the blink of an eye, 2 years have passed. They have yet to make a move. The deity's palace has also been on guard for 2 years, but the realm of the gods is still peaceful. One day, Los asked me to go out and inspect a world. I went, but I was wrong. I should have asked him when I saw his sad face. It's only been a day since I left and came back. The dilapidated, godly palace is empty. There are traces of destruction on the myriad gods' world. The barrier between the great elemental realms has been worn down a lot. The entire 8 elemental realms is covered in chaotic time turbulence. Walking in the dilapidated myriad gods' world, it's very quiet. Fresh blood covered the ground, and the rivers were dyed red. There was a familiar scent in the air, and even the sky was dyed red. Corpses were strewn all over the ground. Some were gods, but most were mortals. I saw a pair of old men in their twilight years holding hands. Their eyes were closed, and they were smiling peacefully. I had long expected that such a day would come, but I didn't know when it would happen. Although I had felt uneasy before, when this day really came, my heart was extremely calm. The only regret should be that I didn't have time to bid farewell to them, right? Standing in front of the throne that Los used to sit on, I heard a loud laugh behind me. I missed it again. I'm going to make my move. Wait for me. When the sound of reading gradually stopped, Yin looked at the diary. She didn't know when her mood was affected. Although this god didn't really express her feelings, he could feel that she must be very sad. It was just that, after living for so long, she seemed to be indifferent to everything in the world. After hearing this, Zian was silent for a long time. Both of them looked at the page and didn't say anything for a long time. Long breaths rose and fell in this place. The surroundings were silent. The blue flames on the stone pillar rose straight up. After a long time, Zian sighed and said, "Since this diary was left behind, this god should have won the battle, right?" Hearing this, Yin was stunned. Her gaze paused on the page for a while. She gently flipped her hand over. There wasn't as much writing on the back as on the front. Only one sentence was left. Yin looked at it and softly read it. "I didn't die. I survived. But why am I the only one left in the world?" Looks like that's right. This sky god survived the battle of the god's dusk. Yin nodded. He didn't know about the mythological era, nor did he know why this battle happened. The only thing he knew was what he saw in the ruins of the gods. "Do you think this god survived and is still alive?" Zian's jade-like hand gently stroked the page. She suddenly thought of something and said, "It's been so long, more than 90 years. She should have turned into dust long ago. It's impossible for anyone to live for so long." Yin shook her head when she heard this somewhat ridiculous question. "But, you see, after the Dark Age passed, the blessings of the great Yuan realm were restored. Could it be that she came back to life after the Dark Age?" Zian thought for a while and said, Yin was stunned when she heard this. She thought for a while and frowned slightly. After a while, she said, "That seems to make sense. But can anyone really survive after such a long time? Even gods can't survive for so long, right?" I don't know. Xian shook her head helplessly. She watched as Yun Nuoxing closed the diary. She suddenly glanced at the bottom left corner of the back of the book. There seemed to be a few words written there. She pulled the latter excitedly and pointed at the words with her jade-like finger. She shouted, "Look, the name. The name of that god." Just as she was about to say something, she heard Xian shout. Yin Nuoxing quickly turned his gaze. He was also quite interested in the owner of this diary and wanted to know more about the author. When he turned his gaze over, he was stunned. "What's wrong?" Xian quickly asked when she saw that he was stunned. "No, the name on this is..." Yin Nuoxing shook her head and looked at the words in confusion. Although it was a little strange, she still said it. Ancient Flame Meteor. Chapter 237. Ash Flame Meteor. Upon hearing this name, Xian and Zai repeated it at the same time. The former was puzzled, while the latter gasped. She sounded a little shocked, as if she had heard something unbelievable. Yin Nuoxing was shocked. "What's wrong with this name?" Upon hearing this gasp, Yin Nuoxing quickly asked in her heart. There were probably not many things in this world that could shock Zai. However, this name alone was enough to make her gasp. "This name," Zai murmured. Just as she was about to say it, the closed diary flipped open on its own. It directly flipped to the first page. A few short lines of words appeared in the originally blank space. Yin Nuoxing quickly turned her gaze and looked at Xian and Ming, who were also curiously leaning over. She shook her head helplessly and read softly. "This is a code name. This is a name. I am Ash Flame Meteor. This name is me. From now on, the past will be sealed in dust. I will streak across the sky like a meteor and illuminate all the worlds. Born for destruction, dying for destruction. I will carry this world on my back." This paragraph seemed to explain the formation of this strange name, but it did not specifically explain why this name was given. She seemed to have intentionally changed the original name. Born for destruction, dying in destruction, destroying the world, destroying others, destroying oneself. "This person," Zai murmured. Her voice was tinged with respect and a little bit of fear. "What's wrong with this person? Tell me." Yin Nuoxing could not help but urge when she heard that she did not say anything. "This ash flame meteor is the first great heavenly god, the god of destruction among the master heavenly gods." Zai murmured. When she said this name, her voice was especially soft, as if she was afraid of waking something up. Although she was not familiar with this name, Yin Nuoxing's hands involuntarily trembled when she heard the deity position at the end. She straightened her back slightly. The god of destruction, as described by this divine position, was a god born for the sake of destruction. It was one of the three divine pillars under the command of the god of creation. This was the only introduction in the ancient books. It was a short line of words, but it represented a power that was above the world. Under this name, the life and death of all living beings seemed to have become meaningless. Since this diary was left behind by the god of destruction, then the person who can command her, that Ross, should be the god of creation. That temple should be the god of creation's temple. After taking a deep breath, Zai said slowly, "However, I don't know who could be a match for the god of creation. I don't understand how the god of creation, who represents the supreme divine right of the world, and the god of creation fell so easily. I don't understand." Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing thought of the mural. The hundreds of people who appeared out of nowhere disappeared under the black fog. At the end of the god of creation's temple, only the god of destruction, Cangyan Liuxing, was left. Thinking of this, he was a little confused. Who could be a match for such a legendary master? Perhaps they were only legendary masters, right? Yin Nuoxing thought about it and told Zai this idea. "That won't happen. You don't understand the rules between the gods, so you'll think that way. However, the strength of the gods isn't calculated like that." Violet Knight sighed and directly rejected his idea. Then he slowly explained. From a moment of ascension to godhood, the rules were equivalent to a change. In the division of power, one's own cultivation was the most important, followed by the god's own divine right. However, under the situation of being of the same level of power, The more important thing was the divine right. When the difference was not very big, the one with the greater divine right could directly close the gap. When the cultivation level was the same, the one with the greater divine right could directly suppress the opponent without any effort. That's why at the rebirth realm, most gods pay attention to the cultivation of their divine right. If their divine right isn't strong enough, they'll be disrupted, suppressing the divine power in their body for a split second. You know what the consequences are, Violet Knight said. After hearing this, Yin Nuoxing stuck out his tongue. He had not reached the level of rebirth state yet, so naturally he did not know these things. However, he patiently listened to her to the end and took it as a learning experience. In fact, there were basically no books that recorded such a god. The only introduction was about the god of destruction and not Songyin Liuxing. It was as if the existence of this god had been erased. However, the name of this god did not sound like a god who sent down auspicious signs. Moreover, the books also said that this god was born for destruction. Zai, do you understand this god? Yin Nuoxing threw this question out for no reason, causing both of them to be stunned. How would I understand this god that has passed a few eras? Zai sighed when he heard this ridiculous question. Did he really think that she was an encyclopedia? That she knew everything in the world? After being rejected, Yin Nuoxing gave up on the idea of exploring further. Zai had existed much longer than him. Although she was trapped in the enchantment and most of her memories were erased, some memories that had nothing to do with the sealed person were left behind. Therefore, she still knew a lot of things. If even she did not know, it was even more impossible for him to know. Thinking of this, Yin Nuoxing sighed and slowly closed the silent diary. When she saw that Xian was still frowning in deep thought, she could not help but tell him about these things. Of course, the results shocked her. The god of destruction from the mythological era, the title of the first god of destruction, was enough to shock the world. For mortals like them, it was unattainable, so it was normal for them to be shocked. Let's go further in and see what's there. Thinking of the 2 black and white pearls that Uncle Lu gave him, and then looking at the end of the diary, Yin Nuoxing hesitated for a moment before saying, "Okay." His words pulled the absent-minded Yin back to reality. She understood what he had said and nodded. She was a little curious about the first-generation divine master who had appeared out of nowhere and wanted to find records related to him in these ruins. Seeing this, Yin Nuoxing also nodded. Just as she was about to go around the diary and walk to the back of the passage, her gaze paused for a moment. After hesitating for a long time, she still took it. Who knows what use it might have in the future? On both sides of the passage was a deep and dark abyss. Occasionally, 1 or 2 cold winds would blow from below, and the sound of the wind could be heard. There were no murals on the mountain wall behind the diary. It was just a smooth and flat mountain wall. It was also quiet along the way. This ruin did not even have any traps set up. It was as if it was really waiting for someone to come and open this ruin. After walking for 10 miles, the ground changed from silver-blue metal to yellow earth. The mountain walls on both sides were still huge. Walking along this passage that led to an unknown place, they seemed to have gone down a slope. The slope was so slight that it was hard to tell. Their eyes were fixed straight ahead, and they didn't even know that they had walked down the slope. The space in front of them suddenly became wide, and green light flooded over. The dazzling light caused Yin Nuoxing to habitually close her eyes. It took her a while to adjust to it. She removed the palm that was covering her eyes and looked forward. Just one glance was enough to shock her. "Shoo!" Yin Nuoxing whistled softly. Her cheeks twitched a few times. She turned her head and saw that Xian was also staring at her in shock. A huge black palace stood beside the mountain wall. Even though they were far away, they could still see that it was huge and magnificent. The entire palace was black without any other colors. It was as if it was carved out of a piece of black stone. An ancient aura filled this space, and there was a faint tyrannical pressure that made Yin Nuoxing's legs go weak. She hurriedly took out the swirling zither. Although she didn't plan to use it, it could still be used to resist this divine pressure. The swirling zither released an energy shield that covered an area of 10 feet around Yin Nuoxing. Some faint energy could be vaguely seen circulating around it, and the pressure they were enduring was also transferred over. Temple of Destruction. Yin Nuashing murmured softly when she saw the deep words outside the palace. She walked to the foot of the palace and looked up at the Temple of Destruction that was as tall as the cave. Yin Nuashing felt even more insignificant. The divine pressure was like a mountain pressing down on them. Even the energy shield of the swirling zither trembled slightly. After a while, she turned her gaze back and looked at the door in front of her. As expected, there was a piece of the 8 trigrams on the door. The yin fish and the yang fish were both missing an eye. Seeing the 2 holes, Yin Nuashing smiled knowingly. She took out the 2 pearls that Uncle Lu had given her and inserted them into the yin fish. Crack! Just as the 2 eyes returned to their original positions, the sound of metal contracting could be heard from the door. Then the 8 trigrams diagram in the center of the door began to spin rapidly. The black and white borders gradually disappeared and finally merged into one to form a complete circle. Seeing this, Yin Nuashing pulled Xian back a little. She held the swirling zither in front of her and was on guard. Hum! The spinning 8 trigrams let out a crisp hum. Suddenly, it released a beam of light that enveloped Yin Nuashing and the others. The resplendent light illuminated the entire underground cave. The sudden change stunned Yin Nuashing. Before she could react, the blinding light rushed into her vision like a ball of sun. Although she didn't feel any energy being released, the energy shield of the swirling zither automatically disappeared. Without the protection of the energy shield, they didn't feel any pressure. They only felt a little warm when the light shone on them. Hum! The resplendent light slowly receded. After a soft hum, it completely disappeared. Yin Nuashing and the others were no longer in their original positions. Only the 8 trigrams in front of the door was slowing down and gradually coming to a stop. The blinding light gradually disappeared. When she opened her eyes again, Yin Nuashing was stunned. This place was a vast and boundless grassland. Warm sunlight poured down from the horizon. Lazy clouds floated in the blue sky and reflected in the lake. A gentle breeze swept over from the other side of the mountain, bringing with it a breath of life. It was very comfortable as it hit one's face. The warm temperature made one feel a little lazy. What the hell? Chapter 238. The tranquil lake, the beautiful sky, the distant mountains, the lazy white clouds, the gentle breeze, and the vast grassland. It was a paradise that was perfect for sleeping in. What the hell? Yin Nuashing's mouth fell open in the shape of an O. Looking at this place that had suddenly appeared, it was a little strange. She couldn't understand what was going on. Looks like we've been teleported in. Zai looked around through Yin Nuashing's line of sight. But the interior of the Temple of Destruction is a little different from what I imagined. Zai had imagined that the interior of the temple would be gloomy, dark, and full of danger. But now, this peaceful scene seemed to indicate that this was the kind of world that the god of destruction yearned for. It felt a little out of place. It's okay. I think it's pretty good. Don't you think the god of destruction, who yearns for peace and tranquility, is a good god? Yin Nuashing knew what Zai was thinking and laughed. Where's Xian? Ming is gone too. After saying that, Yin Nuashing turned around and was about to take the 2 of them for a walk around when he realized that there was no one beside him. He couldn't help but be stunned. He hurriedly walked around in a circle. The vast grassland was full of green. There wasn't even a trace of white. He instantly panicked. Don't be so agitated. They were probably teleported away randomly. The world that was created shouldn't be that big. Let's go and look for them. Zai sighed helplessly when he sensed Zai's panic. Little Star was still so impatient. Almost as soon as he said that, Yin Nuashing's figure disappeared from the spot. In a flash of golden light, he appeared 1,000 meters away in the next moment. Zai couldn't help but laugh at his anxious appearance. Little Star is in such a hurry. It seems like you care a lot about that little girl. Yin Nuashing's figure trembled violently. He almost couldn't control himself and fell to the ground. His handsome face flushed red. He coughed violently and hurriedly said, I I don't care about Zian. I know. I didn't say who you care about. Do you have to be in such a hurry to disassociate yourself? Zai laughed when he heard his incoherent explanation. Ah! In the sky above the boundless grassland, a golden light streaked across the sky. The extreme speed caused the space to tremble slightly. Yin Nuoshing scanned the green grassland below him. His soul energy spread out like ripples in the air, enveloping everything within 100 miles of him. Zai, didn't you say that this world shouldn't be that big? After flying aimlessly for a long time, Yin Nuoshing finally came to a stop. Gasping for breath, he couldn't help but ask. Half of his dazzling light purple hair had turned white. It seemed that when he used the light essence, he also used his life force. Moreover, he had been using it for a long time. Otherwise, his surging life force wouldn't have been depleted so quickly. Right, shouldn't be that big. Didn't you hear shouldn't? Hearing his words, Zai said in ridicule, head to the right. I can feel a bit of aura. Maybe it's there. Yin Nuoshing rolled his eyes. He felt that he had been cheated, but didn't say anything. Looking to the right, he flew in that direction again. The light elements surged in his body. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Just as Yin Nuoshing was about to cry out, in the distance, a mountain range had just leaped behind him. He saw a brown pillar of light standing on the horizon, like a beacon, guiding him. Seeing the familiar brown pillar of light on the horizon, Yin Nuoshing smiled faintly. The anxiety in his heart slowly lessened, and he sped up a bit. At the foot of a jade mountain, Zian raised her lily-white hand. The brown pillar of light enveloped 1/2 meter around her. The energy in her body was unceasingly being released. Cold sweat flowed down her beautiful face. Her long, shapely eyebrows were slightly knitted. Her white teeth bit her red lips in pain, making people feel tender affection for her. Ming Ming anxiously tugged at the hem of Ziyan's white dress. Her lively big eyes looked around anxiously. Ever since they appeared here, the latter had been releasing a huge amount of energy towards the sky like this, as if she wanted to give Yin Star a beacon so that he could find them. However, with Ziyan's cultivation alone, even if she had a 5 elements body, her body was a little overwhelmed by the energy output for such a long time. Brother, where are you? Come quickly. Raising her head to look at Yin, who was clenching his teeth and persevering, Ming Ming muttered anxiously. Just as she was about to ask Yin to stop and rest, a laughter caused them to be stunned. Sorry to keep you waiting. A hearty laugh suddenly sounded behind them. A white hand slowly rested on Ziyan's shoulder. The surging immortal chi wrapped around the light pillar of energy that was constantly being released and retracted into her body. Yin Nuoshing patted her head, then picked up Ming and smiled. Thank you for your hard work. Ziyan's beautiful face turned a little red when he suddenly patted her head. She hurriedly waved her hand and wanted to say something, but in the end, she just nodded blankly. Brother, we're too late. Ming patted Yin Nuoshing's chest unhappily and said bitterly. She pouted angrily, and he couldn't help but laugh. Little star, there's something on this mountain. Let's go up and take a look. Zai's voice suddenly sounded in his mind, startling Yin Nuoshing. Then, his eyes lit up with a fiery light, startling both Ziyan and Mingyi. It was no wonder he had such an expression. Whatever was left in the palace of the god of destruction was definitely not something ordinary. If they brought it to the outside world, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. What is it? Yin Nuoshing asked in his mind, laughing awkwardly when he saw the two of them staring at him blankly. I don't know. Maybe it's something left behind by Tsang, Yin, Liuxing. It could be a weapon, or it could be some other spell formation. In any case, it has something to do with her. Zai shouted anxiously when she heard this. She could only feel a faint trace of divine authority flowing in this place. The source was on that mountain, but she wasn't sure what it was exactly. Zai's uncertain voice made Yin Nuoshing feel a little helpless. He turned to look at the giant mountain that was thousands of feet tall. The entire mountain was a sparkling and translucent jadeite color, as if it was made of high-quality jade. There was a brilliance flowing within it, and it didn't look like an ordinary object. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at the mountaintop. He smiled and said, "Let's go. Let's go up and take a look." After he finished speaking, he directly grabbed Ziyan's wrist. Under her nervous gaze, he spread out his 6 wings and shot toward the top of the mountain like a rocket. In just a few blinks of an eye, he flew to the top of the mountain. There was a sunken basin at the top of the mountain, like a smooth mirror. It was tens of thousands of feet wide and reflected the sunlight back. Standing on the basin, one could see some green energy flowing under the mirror. Thousands of small streams of energy converged into a long river of energy that flowed continuously to the center. This mountain itself is a treasure, right? Yin Nuoxing said in surprise as he opened his evil spirit eye and saw the energy of heaven and earth flowing continuously to the mountain and converging at the center. I've never seen a formation like this before. Under the green mirror was an incomparably complicated formation. It seemed to cover the entire mountain. Zai could see everything with her evil spirit eye, but after a while, she wailed with a headache. Looking at this thing was too tiring. You can't understand it either? Hearing this wail, Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. Just now, he had only taken a glance, and a feeling of dizziness came from his mind, causing him to hurriedly turn his gaze away and place his hopes on Zai. In the end, I can't understand it. Zai sighed. This formation was too dense. Even though it was just a secondary formation, its complexity was not inferior to a complete heaven-refining formation. Even some ordinary 8th or 9th level divine formations were not as complicated as it. More importantly, she seemed to have seen some other energy within it. After thinking about it, she decided not to tell Yin Nuoxing. In the center of the basin, a large silver-blue tree appeared. It seemed a little out of place. However, when Yin Nuoxing and the others approached and took a closer look, they were shocked to discover that this was not a tree. Instead, it was the shape of a tree formed by interweaving energy matrices. These lines extended from the emerald mountain below, and energy flowed continuously into it, nourishing this large tree. He placed the drawing board used to create the formation outside the formation. Just based on this legendary deity can aspire to be a legendary formation master. Zai murmured solemnly. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Everyone knew that the outermost formation was used as a drawing board. It formed a circle and was used to plan the energy matrices of the formation. The formation master was the artist. They displayed their talents freely on this drawing board. However, what they saw in front of them subverted their understanding of formations. That large tree formed by energy matrices stood outside the formation. In other words, this formation was carved in the void. There was no medium such as a drawing board. How extravagant. Yin Nuoxing was a little dazed as he looked at this tree that was at least 1,000 feet tall. How powerful did one have to be to create a formation and maintain it for dozens of eras? Is this the work of a deity? Ziyan also looked at the tree in surprise. He slowly walked over with Yin Nuoxing. Standing under the tree, which was only a few feet away, they could see the dense and intertwined matrices. It was impossible to tell which matrices belonged to which. Under the bright silver-blue light, both of them felt a little dizzy. Yin Nuoxing hesitated for a moment. Then, he stretched out his finger and gently tapped on the bark. Ripples spread out like water, spreading to every inch of the tree. Hum! A light sound echoed in the area. A dazzling light shot out from the matrices tree in front of them, completely blocking their vision. Yin Nuoxing and the others were stimulated by the dazzling light. They hurriedly covered their eyes with their hands, and their bodies were drowned in the sea of light. Ding-ling, the sound of wind chimes echoed in their ears. Sensing that the dazzling light gradually faded, Yin Nuoxing slowly moved her hands away. She glanced at Ziyan, who was blinking at Mei Mao beside her, and then looked at Ming, who was in her arms. Seeing that the two of them seemed to be fine, she breathed a sigh of relief. She relaxed and looked around. Their position had been silently moved again. This was a pure white room. The light purple and white curtains swayed slightly with the breeze that blew in from outside the window. On the light blue bed sheets, small fragments of sunlight lay quietly on them. On the light white table that was stained with ink, a book with a parchment cover was casually opened and flipped with the wind. There was also a feather that was stained with ink on the table. It was not put back into the bottle, but was pushed to the side of the chair, indicating that the owner seemed to have rushed out in a hurry. This is a soul projection? The unusually realistic scene made Yun Nuoxing stunned for a moment. When he saw the open book, which was the same as the diary he saw in the passage, he sucked in a breath of cold air. He hurriedly walked to the table and gently reached out his hand, actually pressing it down. You can actually touch it? Seeing that she pressed down on the flipping diary, Xian exclaimed in shock. The things that happened in the soul projection should not be affected by the person who saw it. They should only be able to watch the events unfold from the side, like a bystander. This is not a soul projection. It's a real projection. It's the creation of a memory. The things that happened in it have happened before, but the changes made in the present will not change the results of that time. It's a special technique of the gods. Zai smiled when he saw this scene. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing stuck out her tongue. She lowered her head to look at the open diary and slowly flipped through it. Chapter 239. Beginning of the 61st Era. Another new era has been born. 20 eras have passed without me noticing. My time has been separated by a reincarnation cycle. I have sealed that memory. Perhaps the birth of that era was all my fault, or perhaps not. The world of the gods has begun to recover. There are people from the lower realms who have crossed the boundary between realms and arrived at the Eight Elements realm. When they arrived at the world of the gods, the vitality of all living things slowly recovered. The blood-red color that filled the heavens and earth has long been retracted. It is a dark and broken world. Those who have come before me are disappointed and dejected. They want to return to the lower realms, but it is impossible. The god of life has also fallen. I am the only one left in the Genesis shrine. Although it is easy for me to recover all living things with my ability, I did not do so. I want to see how far these people can go with their own willpower and strength. Perhaps my beloved world of the gods will be led to a better path by them? What is lost is lost. Lorth and the others have chosen to leave the reincarnation cycle. To them, it is a kind of release. However, I cannot die yet. There are still things that I must do. I must personally take back what belongs to me, what belongs to us. For this, I must continue to live. Today, I met Lorth and the others in the lower realms. They have lost their divine power and become ordinary mortals. They do not recognize me. When I saw them laughing happily in a group of people, I wanted to cry. I wanted to rush up and forcefully awaken their memories. However, they have given up on reincarnation and left the eternal reincarnation cycle. They can no longer return. For all eternity, Lorth will be immortal. He will always live in the lower realms. Beginning of the 62nd Era. Another era has passed. I have spent the long days in a deep sleep. I have also suffered heavy injuries that are difficult to recover. Today, it seems that this day has come again. I looked at the 100 tombstones and wanted to laugh. I never thought that one day I would worship them in such a way. It is quite funny when you think about it. Gods are buried in tombs. Perhaps mortals have never thought that the gods they worship day and night would die one day. Today, I went to the lower realms for a stroll. The recovery speed of the lower realms is much faster than that of the Eight Elements realm. In less than 10 billion years, I returned to the scene I once saw. I walked on the narrow streets as a drizzle fell from the sky. It felt quite comfortable when it touched my body. I'll stay in the lower realm. I'll just take it as a distraction. Using my eternal life to get to know a mortal's life seems pretty good, but I have to change out of this outfit that doesn't suit me. Moreover, I've already adapted a life here, so it won't seem too abrupt. The place where I live is in the center of the city. It's a small district with more elderly and children. The adults seem to be running around outside all day. Very few of them stay at home all day. standing on the balcony and watching the old and young playing in the garden, I suddenly feel a little sad that there's no one to accompany me. The family next door is a pair of brother and sister. Their parents seem to have celebrated their birthday very early. When I just decided to move in, they came to help me. I was very happy. It's the first time I've met people. The next evening, the two of them came back from outside with a bag on their back. I peeked at them and was seen by them. They said that they had come back from school. At first, I didn't quite understand what the so-called school was until I followed them to a place called school. Only then did I realize that the so-called school was a group of people gathering in a place to study. Only then did I realize that it was similar to a gymnasium. They were all studying in one place. The difference was that they were sitting in chairs and listening to the lectures of the adults whose profession was called teachers. There were also piles of books on the tables, which could be covered by them, even if they buried their heads. There were even people lying down to sleep in the classroom. They seemed to be having a hard time in class. I saw a boy who slept from the first class until lunchtime. Then I heard the noisy bell ring and saw him and a group of people swarming to the place called the cafeteria. I licked my lips. I hadn't eaten in a long time, and I felt inexplicably hungry. After class, he walked in from somewhere else and sat with his sister. He smiled and said a few words to the people who passed by. They came out of classroom last. When they saw me standing at the door of the classroom, they seemed very surprised. They pulled me to the cafeteria, thinking that I went to school here. We had a meal in this place where a group of people gathered. I haven't touched food for a long time, and at first I even forgot how to use chopsticks. It's been a while since I came to this world. Perhaps it's my temperament as a god, or perhaps it's the feeling of having experienced the vicissitudes of time. But it's easy for people to remember me. Gradually, almost everyone in this building knows who I am. Of course, it's also because of the relationship between that pair of siblings. The neighbors here seem to take good care of them, and that's how they got to know me. In the mortal world, the energy of heaven and earth is very thin. The energy contained in a world is not enough for me to practice once. Although I don't need to practice now, my internal injuries haven't completely healed. It seems to be the sequela of my last injury. Due to the lack of energy, it's a bit troublesome to recover. Moreover, I can't directly fly to outer space. It's said that there's a tool invented by humans here called a satellite. It hangs high above the head and can monitor what's happening in this world. When I learned about this, I touched my head, thinking that it was really hanging above my head, but turned out that the top of my head was actually at the edge of the planet. Living such an ordinary life day after day, year after year, I feel quite fresh. I'm not tired of it. I get up early every day, eat 3 meals a day, go out for a walk in the morning and evening, and go next door to watch TV at night. Gradually, I've adapted to such a life. Compared to the tiring battles in the 8 elements realm, I prefer such a stable and peaceful life. Sure enough, people will have such thoughts when they're old, right? This afternoon, I heard a child in the park say that he wants to be an astronaut and fly to outer space. I thought that he's really good at jumping. He wants to fly to outer space at such a young age. A few years have passed without me noticing. The brother and sister have changed schools. They said that they entered junior high school, and junior high school. According to my understanding, they seem to have upgraded. However, although the original school also had junior high school classes, her brother said that he wanted her to go to a better place to study. I also agreed. It's good to have a better place to practice. But in this way, the brother and sister will be separated. What's more, they won't come back for a few days. Since I'm free, I bought a few books from this world to read. After reading them, I'm glad that I didn't say anything unnecessary. They seem to be resting. These few days, the brother and sister have been staying at my house, but there's nothing in my house. Other than a cabinet of books that I bought to spread the knowledge of this world, there's only a table and a chair in the living room. There's nothing else. After all, I live alone, and I don't need so many things. Now it seems that this shabby room can't be used to entertain people at all. Although I wanted to use my divine power to create the furniture directly, I was afraid of scaring people, so I didn't do it. They didn't mind. They directly brought chairs over and I sat in the room. The 3 of them quietly took the books from the bookshelf and read. I felt quite happy. This was the first time I've received guests. Today, they were carrying a bulging bag full of things. I thought they were going to school again, but they pulled me and said that they wanted to go out to play. I was bored and had nothing to do, so I naturally followed them. However, we weren't the only ones going. Some of the neighbors upstairs and downstairs were also going. Everyone was carrying a big bag, which gave me a fright. Then, I followed them onto a vehicle that I read in a book. It's called a bus, which can seat 30 to 40 people. When we arrived at a mountain, I found out that they came to the mountain to play. It's not too far from the city. It's a good place to avoid the summer heat. Walking on a mountain road, although I didn't feel hot, I couldn't help but use my divine power to create a small breeze when I saw them sweating profusely. I couldn't help but laugh out loud when I saw them exclaim in relief. Standing at the top of the mountain, I looked at the distant mountains shrouded in clouds and fog. Although I've seen this scene countless times in the realm of the gods, it was a different kind of scene in the lower realm. Everyone was sitting on a rock at the side, fanning themselves with their fans and saying something to the surrounding scenery. It was a peaceful scene. I hid my identity very well. Or rather, I didn't deliberately hide it because no one asked. Every family has its own difficulties. That's what they said. Therefore, my identity wasn't exposed. As long as I don't use my divine power, I'm no different from them. I live like an ordinary person. You're dead. Yin Nuashing felt a little nervous when she saw this sentence. Xian also clenched her fists and placed them on her chest. She looked at him anxiously. Xian hesitated for a moment, but still turned the page. A heavy downpour fell from the sky and hit the ground with a crisp sound. A large truck crashed into the guardrail on the side of the canal, and two flashing lights tore through the darkness of the entire road. A heart-wrenching scream came from the distance. It sounded familiar, so I hurriedly quickened my pace and jogged over. The girl's brother was kneeling on the ground. The girl in his arms was soaked in blood, leaving a pool of blood on the ground. There was a trace of a smile on her cute little face, but the rain washed away and diluted it. I knew many of the neighbors around us. They were all holding their phones and making calls. Some of them even went up to give the girl emergency treatment. I was the only one who could see that the girl's life force was slowly fading away. I slowly walked over. After all, I had seen this kind of scene many times, so I didn't feel much sorrow in my heart. I just felt a little pity. This once beautiful flower was going to die early. The people at the scene couldn't do anything about it. They could only watch this beautiful flower die slowly. Of course, I could save her, but now wasn't the time. In the hospital's morgue, only the girl's brother, I, and some of the neighbors came in. The others couldn't stand the eerie atmosphere, so they waited outside. I looked at the drawers and saw that there were corpses inside. The girl was lying quietly on the gurney. She had changed in her favorite light white and light red dress. Her soft, long hair was neatly lying on the gurney. Her eyes were closed, and she looked very peaceful. I gently touched her forehead and entered her soul that hadn't left yet. In her soul world, the girl stared blankly at her brother. Her eyes were bloodshot. It seemed that she had been crying for a long time. Tianqin, you're dead. I slowly walked forward and patted her shoulder. I said calmly. The sudden voice startled her. The girl turned around in panic. When she saw that it was me, she was a little confused and uneasy. However, she seemed to be relieved. You are here to collect my soul? The black and white impermanence of the underworld? I shook my head. I didn't know how to explain it to her. You still don't want to leave this world, right? No, I'm just worried. My brother is too stupid. I'm afraid that if I leave, he won't be able to live well by himself. The girl shook her head. She looked at the image of the boy who seemed a little haggard. Her eyes were filled with longing. Then, I'll help you. I nodded. Actually, I hated sad endings. Although I knew that their world didn't have much to do with me, I just couldn't bear it. I just wanted a happy ending. Since I had intruded into your world, I would change the trajectory a little. I left the girl's soul world. My divine power quietly flowed into her body and repaired the damaged parts. Her body regained its vitality. After a short while, the girl suddenly opened her eyes wide. The girl's sudden awakening gave them a fright. Then, they were overjoyed. The boy hugged her tightly and cried. I smiled as I watched them hug each other. The girl looked at me as if she wanted to say something. I put a finger to my lips and then slowly walked out of the morgue. Several decades had passed, but the girl was still the same. She was so petite that it seemed like she would never grow. My divine power had changed her lifespan and extended her lifespan. However, time never stopped. We stood in a place with many tombs. The owner of the tombs was an old man who was smiling happily. The girl left behind a bouquet of flowers. The boy's ashes were scattered into the ocean according to his wishes. I summoned the boy's soul back. It could be considered a final farewell for the brother and sister. After today, the boy would enter the underworld, while the girl would still be alive. They would be separated by the realms of the living and the dead. In the end, I followed the girl's choice and brought her back to the Eight Elements realm. She didn't ask me to save her brother. Everything was like that, although I made an exception and saved her brother. Chapter 240. At the back of the diary were some of the things that Song Yin Liuxing encountered in the lower realm. The difference was that the girl had always been by her side. After countless years, the number of people around her had also increased. They were all young boys and girls who died prematurely due to accidents. She couldn't bear to see such a tragic ending, so she chose to change. And those who were changed by her, without exception, all followed her back to the Eight Elements realm. The journey in the future will be more or less interesting, right? At the end of the diary, this sentence was written at the bottom. Yin Nuoxing gently closed the diary. After a long silence, he let out a sigh of relief and smiled. What an interesting God! In his understanding, gods were all high and mighty and disdained to be associated with mortals. He didn't expect Song Yin Liuxing to ignore her so-called status and live in the lower realm for so many years. Hearing this, Xian agreed. The diary showed them a different world, a world dominated by ordinary people. It was completely different from the realm of the gods, which made them a little curious. It would be great if we could go and see the world described in the diary. Yin Nuoxing smiled as he gently stroked the sheepskin cover. Yes, Xian nodded. After listening for so long, he also had some yearning for that world. Outside the window, there was a small hill with nearly 100 tombs. At the beginning, Yin Nuoxing had noticed them, but he couldn't wait to read the diary in front of him, so he didn't pay attention to them. Now that he had finished reading the diary, they could go out and take a look. At the top of the hill, there was a god spirit tree. Its branches and leaves spread out, spreading for nearly 1,000 feet. Bright gold and silver flowed through the entire tree, overflowing with light and color. Legend said that the god spirit tree only fell in the burial grounds of gods. Only the pure divine power that overflowed could give it enough energy to grow. The god spirit tree could also protect the souls of sleeping gods, and it wouldn't decay after countless years. Therefore, the god spirit tree was also called the guardian tree, and it only bloomed in front of the tombs of gods. It was a pity that the 100 tombs were empty, and there were no souls to protect it. It grew alone at the top of the slope, and the sound of its swaying in the wind drilled into his ears. It was a little sad. The divine spirit tree blooms and withers for an entire era. The god of destruction's roots are like a guardian of the soul. Is the god of destruction reminiscing? She clearly knew that the god of creation and the others had escaped eternal reincarnation. Yet she still insisted on building these empty tombs to bury their divine positions. Zai sighed as he watched the swaying divine spirit tree. His tone was somewhat complicated. Doesn't the tree of God's spirit need to be nourished by the power of God to grow? Yin Nuoxing also knew a little about this huge silver tree, but now he was a little puzzled. Since there were no gods buried in it, why did it grow so big? Once in the mythological era, the tree of God was regarded as a guardian tree by the gods. Once they wanted to sleep or meditate, they would plant a sapling of the tree of God in their sleeping place to protect their souls from being corroded by time. Although there isn't a sleeping God in these tombs, there are divine positions buried in them. The divine power that leaked out created this huge tree of God, as I explained softly. Divine position. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but look at the tombs. He naturally knew what a divine position was. It was a mass of energy that contained all the power of a god. It was a carrier, and according to its literal meaning, it was the position of a god. He muttered these two words silently. Suddenly, a blurry figure floated past him. The snow-white hair and robes fluttered in the wind, and the pure color was somewhat dazzling. The sudden appearance of the person shocked Yun Nuoxing and the others. When they looked closely, they couldn't see anything. They could only recognize that it was a person, but they couldn't see her face clearly. However, Yun Nuoxing still found some clues. The slender hand, holding a bouquet of flowers, made him recognize her immediately. This person was the god of destruction on the mural, Songyin Meteor, in the projection of the memory fragments. Although we outsiders can touch the dead objects that once existed, we are separated from each other and can't touch each other, Sai said helplessly when he saw Yun Nuoxing waving her hand in front of Songyin Meteor. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing smiled sheepishly and retracted his hand, observing what Zai was going to do. It's another era. Songyin Meteor sighed. She gently placed the flowers in her hand on the tomb in front of her. There was only one word carved on the simple tombstone, Los. There was nothing else. My injuries are getting worse. It looks like I can't recover. Although Tianqin and the others have linked their souls with me, it's ultimately useless. She knelt in front of Los's tomb. She raised her face, which couldn't be seen clearly, and swept her gaze across the tombstones. I've already arranged everything. At this moment, all we can do is wait. This is a gamble. If we win, everyone will be happy. If we lose, everything will be lost, and the entire Yuan realm will wither with us. When it's time to make a choice, I can't do it. Songyin Meteor laughed self-deprecatingly. Yun Nuoxing could hear some helplessness in her words, as well as some reluctance. Later on, she even rambled on about some trivial matters in life. Yun Nuoxing didn't really remember it. He treated it as a story to understand how this high and mighty god usually lived. The result was beyond his expectations. I didn't expect a god's life to be similar to ours. Hearing her talk about a lot of things in life, Xian covered her mouth and laughed. She didn't expect that the untouchable god, in everyone's eyes, actually lived a life not much different from theirs. Yun Nuoxing nodded. Just as he pricked up his ears to continue listening, the blurry figure suddenly disappeared. He widened his eyes, unable to understand what was going on. It's missing, or rather, it's missing this part of the memory. After all, the god of destruction left these things behind to let someone understand something. It's impossible that she just wanted us to listen to her ramble on, as I said softly. Yun Nuoxing came to a realization. After waiting quietly for a few minutes, the blurry figure appeared again. This time, it was a little strange. Songyin Meteor's robes were a little tattered, and there was a huge hole in her lower abdomen, as if she had been stabbed. There was also a bright golden trail behind her. Even though it was just an image, Yun Nuoxing could feel that her breath was unusually weak, as if she had been seriously injured, as if she had just finished a great battle. But she didn't care about this. She tidied up her messy robes and knelt down gently in front of Lortha's tomb. She smiled and said, "This day has come again. An era has ended. With blood as the foundation, darkness was cast. The end of this era has used life as the rebar to construct the scaffolding. I wonder what will be born from this. My arrangements are almost complete. All that's left is the final battle. I'm sorry, Lorth. I'm going to tear up my own promise. For us, for the creation shrine, I will take revenge." When this crisp voice fell, Yun Nuoxing saw the 100 tombs suddenly disintegrate. In the blink of an eye, they turned into balls of light. The colorful lights overlapped and shone together, illuminating the entire area. Then, the balls of light that were the size of a human head started to spin around Songyin Meteor at high speed and entered her head in an orderly manner. The 3 balls of light that rose from the 3 tombs at the front were also the brightest. Even through this projection, Yun Nuoxing could feel a great pressure pressing down on the whirlpool zither, and they slowly flew into the glabella of Songyin Meteor. As the balls of light entered her head, Songyin Meteor's snow-white hair started to change in an instant. Various colors bloomed, and finally, it turned into a colorful stream of light. The colors flowed like liquid, and it was incomparably gorgeous. "She's crazy." Seeing this, Zai exclaimed at his heart. His voice was so aghast that it scared Yin Nuashing. A person can inherit at most one deity position. If so many deity positions coexist in one's body at the same time, and there are 4 overgod positions coexisting, then the consequences, what will happen? Yin Nuashing asked hurriedly when she stopped talking. Her body and soul will be destroyed, and her soul will be split into 8 realms. She won't even be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation. She will truly die. This was the first time Yin Nuashing heard fear in Zai's voice. It was unbelievable. "Hey, Lorth, there's an unimaginable variable in the future that I predicted. That variable is so great that it even caused the future I saw to have countless branches. I'm not sure which part to change, but I can't bear to fix that variable. Do you think this step will become a fatal flaw?" Song Yin Meteor's soft and tired murmur quietly sounded. Her entire body emitted a colorful light, and her body actually became transparent. Then, she slowly fell to the ground. Seeing her fall to the ground, Yin Nuashing was shocked. He instinctively reached out to support her, but then he remembered that they couldn't touch each other in this illusion, so he could only withdraw his hand. "But even if I fail because of this factor, I won't have any complaints because this is my choice. It's just that I won't be able to avenge us then. Everyone from the creation shrine, you can understand me." Song Yin Meteor curled up on the ground like a shrimp. Her murmuring voice gradually weakened as her body faded away. "Did I fail?" Spots of light burst out from the delicate body on the ground and hovered in the sky, refusing to disperse for a long time. Yin Nuashing looked at this beautiful yet mournful scene and couldn't help but sigh. At the same time, he felt a little regretful, but at the same time, he was also a little puzzled. With the identity of the first great deity of the destruction god, what kind of enemy would make her do something so suicidal? And what kind of power could it be that even the first great deity of the destruction god's nest couldn't stop them? Hearing this, Zai sighed and denied, "No, I think it's a success." "Succeeded?" Now, I reckon that she has fallen into the cycle of reincarnation. Although she has successfully accommodated all the deity positions of the first great deity into her body, with her originally broken divine soul, forcefully accommodating so many deity positions is undoubtedly one disaster after another. Perhaps she won't wake up for dozens or even hundreds of years. Zi sighed and said with some reverence, "Really a crazy god." Yin Nuashing stuck out her tongue with lingering fear. If she couldn't wake up for dozens of eras, by the time she regained consciousness, the world would have already experienced countless changes, right? But for her, it was just a moment between closing and opening her eyes. Chapter 241. The dazzling light slowly faded away, and what appeared before them was a huge emerald basin. The huge tree formed by energy matrices was emitting an eternal glimmer. Something had appeared in front of them out of nowhere. It was a red crystal the size of a fist that had been elongated in the shape of a rhombus. It was floating in front of them, spinning slowly, but strangely, there was not the slightest energy wave. "Looks like it's not as simple as I thought." As soon as they came out, Yin Nuashing glanced at the spinning red crystal. Before he could ask, Zai said in his mind, "Remember the picture of the scepter in the diary? This crystal is the one on the scepter. If I'm not wrong, this should be the core of the God of Destruction's Godhead weapon. I didn't expect her Godhead weapon to be destroyed. Looks like she was no match for the final battle." The core of the Godhead weapon. Yin Nuashing was very excited when he heard her mention the Godhead weapon, but when he heard her mention the core of the Godhead weapon, he suddenly drooped his head. Zai did not know whether to laugh or cry at his listless look. As everyone knew, every weapon had a core. It was the key point of the weapon's energy output and strengthening. It would be destroyed when the weapon was destroyed. Therefore, every complete weapon core was very precious. Of course, Only blacksmiths had the means to prevent the destruction of a weapon core. There were also blacksmiths who specialized in collecting cores and forging weapons for them. This kind of core could not only be used to reshape a weapon, but could also exist in a second weapon. With an additional core, the power of the weapon was not as simple as 1 plus 1, but the core of the Godhead weapon. Only the gods could use it well. It could be used to repair or strengthen the power of the weapon. The prerequisite was that your cultivation had to reach the godly level. Otherwise, you could only drool over this core. Well, that's not quite right. That scepter is a divine right weapon. Thus, it should be said that it's the core of a divine right weapon. However, right at the moment when Yin Nuashing was dejected, Z started to laugh. Although there was only one word difference between a Godhead weapon and a Godhead weapon, they represented different things. The core of a Godhead weapon was the core of a weapon, while a Godhead weapon was a weapon that was unique to a god and could not be recreated. For example, the God of Destruction's Godhead weapon was a scepter. With it, the power or divine might would increase exponentially. Of course, it's getting more and more useless. Yin Nuashing did not know whether to laugh or cry. The core of the divine power weapon contained the divine power of the god. If the god fell, his deity position would be attached to the divine power weapon. In other words, obtaining the divine power weapon was equivalent to obtaining a deity position. However, the divine power weapon of the god of destruction was a scepter, and this was only the tip of the scepter. The core crystal, a damaged core, naturally didn't have the ability to bestow Yin Nuashing a deity position. Even repairing it would require the help of a god. Why are you so depressed? If it's broken, then take your time to find it. Anyway, you have to travel all over the realm of the gods. Aren't you the self-proclaimed #1 idler in the world? There's plenty of time. One day you'll find it all. Besides, if it's a god. Z paused, then laughed evilly and said, "Can't you just find your little sister Xianyin?" "What do you mean by my?" Hearing this teasing, Yin Nuashing's face immediately turned red. She hurriedly retorted, but found that she could not say anything. What about you?" Z laughed even more proudly when he saw this. She's my little sister, okay?" After being chased, Yin Nuashing's handsome face was so red that it looked like blood could drip from it. After stuttering for a long time, she raised her hands and surrendered, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Brother, what's wrong? Are you having a fever?" Ming exclaimed when he felt Yin Nuashing's cheeks burning hot. "No, I'm fine. Nothing at all." Yin Nuashing hurriedly shook her head. Before anyone noticed anything, she hurriedly suppressed her churning emotions. The whirlpool Zither's self-defensive energy barrier enveloped her hand. Yin Nuashing used this hand to grab the core of the divine right weapon. Boom! Just as she closed her fingers, she suddenly felt the entire Emerald Mountain shake violently. Yin Nuashing staggered and almost fell to the ground. She hurriedly stabilized herself, but when she saw the space around her trembling rapidly, she was shocked. She hurriedly grabbed the core, spread her 6 wings, and rushed into the sky with Xian. The rumbling sound spread throughout the entire space. Even though they stopped in the sky, they could still feel the space trembling. Did I touch something I shouldn't have? That trembling feeling originated from space, causing Yin Nuashing to feel as though his head was shaking and his stomach was churning. He forcefully turned his gaze downwards and was stunned to see that the entire body of the Emerald Mountain was flickering with a piercing jade-green light. It was as bright as a small sun, causing one to be unable to open one's eyes to look at it. A moment later, the mountain suddenly shrank from 100,000 feet in size to the size of a palm in the blink of an eye. As the Emerald Mountain shrank to the size of a fist, the trembling of the space gradually stopped. Yin Nuashing saw the Emerald Mountain fly towards the people in a daze in the sky. Finally, it slowly landed on Yin Nuashing's hand. A few silver threads extended from the center of the depression and wrapped around the red crystal in his palm. The core of a divine right weapon needs to be enveloped in energy at all times. Otherwise, the complete divine right of the god of destruction will be damaged. This should be the work of Tsang Yin Meteor, Zai said calmly when he sensed Yun Nuoxing's confusion. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing tilted her head and looked around. When she saw that there was nothing wrong, she put the mountain and the core into the pendant. Looking down at the world that she had created, Yun Nuoxing let out a long sigh and said to herself with a smile, "There's nothing left here." Xian nodded. Mei Mao finally had time to look around the place. Then, she fixed her gaze on Yun Nuoxing as if she was watching his actions. "Let's go." Seeing her look over, Yun Nuoxing shrugged and grabbed her wrist. Just as she was about to leave, she froze. "Where should we go?" How we teleport out after we teleport in." Yun Nuoxing froze on the spot and looked at Xian foolishly as she laughed dryly. Hearing this, Xian also tilted her head foolishly and looked at him. She didn't know what to say. "Stupid, didn't you just get the core of the divine right weapon? You can use it to open a temporary spatial door to get out." Seeing that both of them were in a daze, Zai's eyebrows twitched uncontrollably. She resisted the urge to scold them and said calmly. Yun Nuoxing came to a sudden realization and hurriedly took out the core that he had just put away. He held it in his hand and injected a little energy into it. The crystal emitted a dazzling light, and in an instant, the space shrank back into the crystal in a visible form. When she opened her eyes again, Yun Nuoxing realized that they were on the ground and there was nothing around them. There was only a patch of green in the distance, which was very conspicuous in this yellow world. We came out directly? Seeing this familiar place, Yun Nuoxing thought for a while, then clapped her hands and exclaimed. The ground around them didn't have any dents. It was as if everything that had just happened was just a dream. Of course, the crystal and the small mountain floating in front of them reminded her that this wasn't a dream. "I'm afraid that the entire underground world was created by this crystal. Now that you've removed the barrier of that world, you've sent us out," Zai said in surprise after thinking for a while. Yun Nuoxing came to a realization and explained it to Xian. Looking at the sun hanging high in the sky, Yun Nuoxing tugged at her robes. The sun was still so scorching. After identifying the direction, she led the two of them and flew towards the village. They didn't know how long they had been out. Most of the time, they were walking in silence and didn't have any concept of time. According to her estimation, it had been 2 or 3 days. Uncle Lu and the others were probably worried. It was better to go back and report to them first. Otherwise, they would think that they had died in the ruins of the gods. The ruins of the gods weren't far from the village. In less than 10 minutes, they saw the somewhat familiar village. Yun Nuoxing took a deep breath of fresh air and couldn't help but sigh. "We finally came out of that damned place. Although we took some things, it was too stuffy there." Seeing the intoxicated look on Yun Nuoxing's face, Xian smiled. Mei Mao stopped at the entrance of the village. There were 2 or 3 people standing in the wind. She pointed her finger and smiled. "Xing, Uncle Lu and the others are over there." Yun Nuoxing looked in the direction she pointed and smiled. She pulled Xian and with a few flashes, appeared in front of Uncle Lu and the others. She smiled. Uncle Lu. Uncle Lu was stunned by the sudden appearance of someone in front of him. His slender eyebrows trembled. After a while, he said in surprise, "You're back. Could it be that you couldn't enter and came back?" When Yun Nuoxing heard that, she was stunned for a long time. She scratched her head, thinking that they were worried about her. She smiled and said, "No, we're back. We're fine. Don't worry." When Uncle Lu heard this, he was also stunned. He exchanged glances with Uncle Ma, who was beside him. His pair of white eyebrows furrowed even deeper, causing Yun Nuoxing to be confused. The former hesitated for a moment, then said strangely, "You guys only went out for a little over 2 hours? You finished so quickly?" "1. This time, Yun Nuoxing was stunned. 2 hours? Not 3 days. 2 hours was just the time it took to go back and forth. What about the rest of the time? Could it be that everything that happened was really a dream?" However, he had indeed touched the core of the divine right weapon and even slapped himself. He didn't find anything abnormal. "Big brother Yun, You indeed went out for a short while and came back. Wang Chun saw the situation. Although he didn't know what happened, he still said honestly. Yin Nuoxing and Zian looked at each other for a long time. The former glanced at Wang Chun and waved at him. The latter was stunned and ran over. After patting Wang Chun's shoulder, Yin Nuoxing grinned. She reached out and slapped him. It was so fast that they couldn't react in time. Slap! A crisp sound suddenly rang out. Zian felt an inexplicable pain on her face. She couldn't help but cover her face with her hands. She carefully turned her head and saw Wang Chun's red face. Even she felt pain just looking at him. Wang Chun's eyes widened after being slapped for no apparent reason. His cheeks began to swell at a visible speed, shocking everyone present. Just how much strength did he use? Big brother Yin, what are you doing? After being slapped for no reason, Wang Chun said aggrievedly. His black eyes were filled with tears. It's not a dream. Seeing him cover his mouth in pain, Yin Nuoxing also shook her hands in pain. She reached out and touched Wang Chun's face lightly. Immortal energy surged, and Wang Chun's face returned to normal. Everyone. So she was using Wang Chun to check if it was a dream. Boo-hoo, big brother Yin, you're so mean. Although he had been treated by Yin Nuoxing and his little face no longer hurt, Wang Chun felt that his heart had been hurt. He cried as he ran. His sorrowful voice made everyone sweat profusely. Xing, you're so mean. Zian tugged at Yin Nuoxing's sleeve and couldn't help but chide her. Yin Nuoxing stuck out her tongue and acted cute. She smiled and said, I'm afraid of pain. Everyone rolled their eyes when they saw this. Chapter 242. In the dead of the night, everything returned to silence. Yin Nuoxing explained to Uncle Lu and the others, and everyone understood what was going on. Actually, it was also because Violet Night had knocked him in his heart, or else he wouldn't have been able to react in such a short time. In the end, when that place disappeared, Uncle Lu and the others didn't know whether to breathe a sigh of relief or feel depressed. After all, they were all under the orders of their ancestors to guard this place for generations. Now that it disappeared just like that, they really didn't know what to say. It was as if they were suddenly relieved, but also as if a piece of their hearts was empty. After a small celebration in the village, when everyone fell asleep, Yin Nuoxing sneaked out of the door. However, just as he stepped out of the door, he turned back and looked at the two beauties on the bed. Seeing that they were already sound asleep and breathing evenly, he was relieved. He helped them pull up the blanket and sneaked out of the door. This time, he didn't sneak out to dig for stones or anything. He did learn a bit of crystal searching techniques in the village, but it was just a superficial knowledge. After some time, he planned to go to the so-called stone gambling den to take a look. He had the evil spirit eye, so he could buy whatever he wanted and dig out a dozen or so second-tier materials. However, during this period of time, Ling Hongjian was unusually quiet, and there wasn't any leakage of energy. Just as he was about to ask Violet Knight's voice automatically sounded in his heart. It's not quiet just because it's sealed. I told you before, a divine weapon is beyond your imagination. It's an existence that's close to a living being. Your seal only prevents Ling Hongjian from absorbing energy from the outside world. But that seal, with your half-baked spiritual godly physique that hasn't even reached the small success stage, it's already not bad if it can last for 180 days. So, for your precious divine weapon, before its seal breaks, you have to put in some effort to help it advance to the second tier. Yes. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing dejectedly responded. He suddenly felt that it was a bit troublesome to carry so many weapons on him. If there was a day when all of his weapons went berserk, then he would be in trouble. TSK, such a thing wouldn't happen to those ordinary divine tier weapons. You don't have to worry about it. Z sneered when he sensed Yin Nuoxing's thoughts. Helplessly shrugging his shoulders, Yin Nuoxing landed in a small forest at the side. He sneakily looked around the surroundings a few times, using his soul detection to sweep back and forth a few times. After confirming that there was no one around, he nodded his head. With a wave of his right hand, the Ling Hong sword appeared in his hand. Around the silver-thin needle, There were a few circles of small black chains surrounding it. Even if the energy was isolated, Yun Nuoxing could still feel a wave of energy that made his heart palpitate. As soon as the Linghong sword appeared, Yun Nuoxing directly threw out the other divine weapons and inserted them into the ground within 5 feet. Then, he placed the Linghong sword in the center of the sword formation. His hand seals slowly changed, and a formation about 10 feet in size was drawn on the ground. It seemed like he was going to seal it. In just a few minutes, Yun Nuoxing felt that the energy contained in the Linghong sword had weakened by a lot. Only then did he put away all the weapons in satisfaction. He patted the Linghong sword. Now he no longer felt that palpitating feeling. If I wasn't afraid that some old monster would sense the energy fluctuation on my body when I go to a crowded place tomorrow, I wouldn't have come out in the middle of the night without sleeping. Looking at the quiet Linghong sword, Yun Nuoxing let out a sigh of relief. He put it back into his body and disappeared in a flash. The next morning, Yun Nuoxing woke up early. He stretched on the chair and yawned. Looking at the 2 girls sleeping comfortably on the bed, he couldn't help but sigh. These days, there wasn't even a bed to sleep on. Looking at their cute sleeping faces, Yun Nuoxing didn't harden his heart to kick them out of bed. He tiptoed out of the stone house and finished his breakfast at Wang Chen's house. He smiled and said, "Little Chun, I'll take you to the stone gambling den to play today. Do you want to come?" "Really?" Wang Chun, who had just put down his bowl and chopsticks, suddenly jumped up and knocked the chair away. The bright stars in his eyes almost blinded Yun Nuoxing. Seeing the latter nod his head, he jumped up excitedly and said with a smile, "I want to see it even in my dreams." "Thank you, big brother Yun. I still need you to lead the way. We won't go to Divine Sky City for the time being. Let's not talk about the distance first." Yun Nuoxing waved his hand and muttered in his heart, "If I found the materials elsewhere, I wouldn't be bothered to go to Divine Sky City. Now that I'm full of treasures, it'll be fun if I'm targeted by some people. No problem. Even in these oases, there are some small cities. They're at least 1,000 miles away from here. Don't worry, big brother Yun, I won't say anything," Wang Chun said excitedly. Hearing this, Wang Chun said excitedly. Seeing Yun Nuoxing's worried expression, he hurriedly promised that he would not cause any trouble. After saying that, Yun Nuoxing asked him to make 2 breakfasts with a sinister smile. After all, the 2 princesses in the stone house had not eaten yet. If he brought them along like this, he was afraid that halfway, their stomachs would shake the sky. However, Wang Chun was so excited that he didn't have any other expression. He skipped to the side and started cooking. Yun Nuoxing ran back to check on the 2 princesses. However, to his surprise, the 2 princesses didn't throw any tantrums when they were woken up. Ming was a little unhappy, but she still jumped out of bed to wash up. Xian, on the other hand, was in a daze for a while. After a while, she rubbed her sleepy eyes and greeted Yun Nuoxing softly. Looking at this cute sleeping face and hearing that soft xing-xing, Yun Nuoxing suddenly felt that he had no regrets in this life. Of course, this thought was killed by him as soon as it arose. He hurriedly coughed dryly and urged her to get up and wash up. Crystal Rock City was 1,000 miles away from the village. It was a small and bustling city in another oasis. However, compared to those giant cities that were easily hundreds of thousands of miles long and wide, this kind of city was more reasonable and normal. It was more suitable for living. Why do those damned broken cities have to be so big? Look at this. This is the size that people should live in. Floating in the sky outside Crystal Rock City, Yun Nuoxing looked at the city that could be seen in a glance. He suddenly felt very gratified. Finally, he didn't have to come into contact with those boundlessly huge cities. When the 3 of them arrived, it was already close to noon. Although with the speed of an immortal rank expert, 1,000 miles was only a matter of 1 or 2 hours, but he had one hanging on his chest, one in his right hand, and one in his left hand. With these 3 burdens together, Yun Nuoxing realized that the speed he was so proud it could be used to make soup. In the end, he still used the light element in anger, and with a swoosh, he arrived outside the city. Of course, the price was, ugh. Wang Chun held onto a nearby tree for support. His face was pale, and he used all his strength. His mouth bulged, and he vomited out the food that he had eaten this morning. Spit it out. You'll feel better after you spit it out. Yin Nuashing patted his shoulder and said indifferently. At the end, he added in his mind, people who ride the light vehicle for the first time are all like this. However, Xian and the others were already used to it. The first time she was carried by the light element, she held onto Yin Nuashing and retched for half an hour. Crystal Rock City. The city walls were completely cast from a kind of pure white boulder. On the walls, several huge blade marks could be clearly seen. An ancient aura slowly drifted over. According to Wang Chun and the others, this city had been guarding this oasis for a very long time. It had always been the center of this oasis. Although it wasn't really at the center of the oasis, it should be said that it was the center of the oasis. The city was also bustling with activity. The streets were filled with endless streams of people coming and going. Yin Nuashing couldn't understand what they were saying, so she could only drag Wang Chun, who had just finished vomiting, to be the interpreter. It was Wang Chun's first time coming to such a big city. He wished he could grow a few more pairs of eyes. However, his stomach was currently churning, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. He didn't even have the interest to appreciate the city. Due to the language barrier, Yin Nuashing couldn't understand the village language. She could only ask Wang Chun to inquire about it. There are only a few famous stone gambling dens in Crystal Rock City. There are quite a few of them that are slightly larger. It seems that there are also some branches of other big powers here. They even advertise their shops. Wang Chun took 2 breaths, opened his mouth wide, and rolled his eyes before slowly saying, "What? Advertisements?" When Yin Nuashing heard that, she was stunned. She looked in the direction that Wang Chun was pointing at and saw a huge red flag hanging on a building. There was even a huge word stone written on it. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. After a while, she laughed bitterly. Of course, she wasn't laughing bitterly because of the signboard. It was because the other side of the signboard was fluttering in the wind. When she turned around, she saw the word Xian written in large letters. Obviously, this was the stone gambling den of the ancient family, the Xian family. I didn't expect the ancient family to be interested in these places. Yin Nuashing scratched her head and looked at the red flag with yellow characters fluttering in the wind. She couldn't help but shake her head. They probably just used this place as a place to attract people's attention. Although these oases are located in remote areas, there's still a decent flow of people. The signboard here is probably to attract people and help the main stone gambling dens in Divine Sky City gain fame. Xian said with a smile as she blinked her beautiful eyes. "Big brother Yin, which power are you going to find trouble with?" Wang Chun rubbed his palms at the side and asked with bad intentions. "Calm down. We're not here to find trouble." Seeing how excited Wang Chun was, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but hold her forehead. However, even though she said that, her heart was beating fast. She was clearly very excited and passionate about this matter. "Big brother, you're the one who needs to calm down," Ming said helplessly as she placed her hand on Yin Nuashing's chest. She could feel her rapidly beating heart. Hearing that, Yin Nuashing chuckled. She looked at her attire and saw that there was nothing wrong with her snow-white clothes. Only then did she lead the 2 of them forward slowly. Of course, they weren't going to the Xian family's stone gambling den. Instead, they were going to a building beside the Xian family that had a similar signboard. It was called the Divine Stone Workshop. When the guard saw Yin Nuashing and the 2 of them walking over, they wanted to stop them and check their identities. However, when they felt the faint pressure from Yin Nuashing's body, the guards were immediately intimidated. They quickly straightened their backs and held their breath. They stared straight ahead and didn't even wipe away the cold sweat that was dripping down their eyes. Inside the stone gambling den, a group of people surrounded some strangely shaped stones. They didn't know what they were talking about. They could even see people walking up to the 2nd floor. There were stones here ranging from 5 to 1,000 caddies. Naturally, their prices range from 10,000 to 1,000,000 or even 10 million. Without much hesitation, Yin Nuashing opened his evil spirit eye. Although he was playful, he was still very clear about when to play and when not to. With the opening of his evil spirit eye, all the stones in front of him could be seen clearly. Naturally, he could also see what was inside. However, there weren't many rare items here. At most, there was a material that could barely be considered a Tier 2 item. Furthermore, the energy wasn't pure. Yin Nuoxing realized that many of the stones here were just empty shells. He didn't know if the Divine Stone Workshop had specially verified this. Big Brother Yin, most of the stones here are empty. Let's go somewhere else. It's better not to waste money. Wang Qin had learned quite a few crystal-seeking skills in the village. Naturally, he could tell that many of the stones here were just waiting to be bought by spendthrifts. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yin Nuoxing smiled and looked at the stairs on the second floor. Very few people would step foot there. It seemed like the price was a little high. Chapter 243. On the second floor of the Divine Stone Workshop, there was a sign with the word medium hanging in front of the door, indicating that this floor should be an intermediate exhibition. Compared to the first floor, there were a lot fewer people on the second floor. Even after entering the door, Yin Nuoxing felt that the world had suddenly quieted down. It seemed that the decorations on the second floor were even more exquisite than the ones below. At least, the soundproofing effect was not bad. Although this place looked slightly gorgeous, it was still a lot worse than the stone workshop that Yin Nuoxing saw in the Divine Weapon City. However, he didn't say anything. After all, the Divine Weapon City truly explained what it meant to have 1,000 gold stones, and the Divine Stone Workshop in front of him was a lot cheaper. However, as the saying goes, you get what you pay for. Although the stones on the second floor weren't considered expensive, the things hidden inside weren't considered treasures. However, there were still some second-tier materials that could barely enter Yin Nuoxing's eyes. For the Ling Hong Jian, these things that could barely enter his eyes were all bought. He even violently dismantled them on the spot, took the things and continued to pick stones. As every stone he picked had something inside, it gradually attracted the attention of some people. As for the onlookers, Yin Nuoxing simply ignored them all. He picked his own stones and let others talk about it. Although he had obtained some sword-forging materials on the second floor, it was still not enough. After all, what Yin Nuo wanted to advance was not some demon-grade weapon or a divine-grade weapon, but the famous Ling Hong sword, which was ranked second on the divine weapon ranking. If he wanted to advance, he had to try his best to do everything. The most important thing, other than the ability of a blacksmith, was the problem of energy shortage. Zi had once said that the energy required to upgrade a divine weapon was several times that of a divine weapon of the same level, and a small piece of ordinary first-tier material couldn't even be forged into a sword. Generally speaking, to upgrade a common first-tier weapon, it would probably require about 50 kilograms of first-tier material. However, this also depended on the size of the weapon. If it was stacked all the way to the divine level, one could imagine the amount. This was also the reason why the Ling Hong Jian needed to use second-tier or third-tier materials, even though it was clearly a second-tier weapon. After shopping for a long time on the second floor and buying all the materials that caught his eye, Yin Nuoxing finally stepped onto the stairs to the third floor. Although he bought a lot of materials, it was still far from what he needed. The stones here could be said to be worth 1,000 gold. Without some financial resources and strength, people really wouldn't dare to set foot here. The third floor was even quieter than the second floor. Everyone was gathered around the giant stone display, quietly whispering, and then quietly completing the transaction. The atmosphere here was similar to the top floor of the Divine Weapon City's stone workshop. Similarly, when he came out of the passage, he saw a wooden plaque at the side with the words, "A caddy is worth 1,000 gold." That's daylight robbery. It's so expensive. A caddy of crystal stones costs 1,000 gold. Seeing this wooden plaque, Wang Chun was so shocked that he almost jumped up. Just as he opened his mouth and exclaimed, he was slapped by Yin Nuoxing. Seeing that no one was paying attention to them, Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief. He was a little mentally prepared for this price. Moreover, it wasn't as expensive as the last time he bought it. However, with the evil spirit's eyes, he discovered that the giant stones weren't obscured. He also understood that the quality of the giant stones here wasn't as good as the ones in the Divine Weapon City. Ming, is there anything special here? Walking down the stairs and seeing so many giant stones displayed, Yin Nuoxing remembered Ming's special senses. He patted her back and smiled. Hearing him suddenly call her, Ming blinked her big, lively eyes. After seriously sensing for a while, she pouted and shook her head, muttering, "No, all right." Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing could only shrug helplessly. He knew that Ming's senses were very accurate. Since there wasn't anything, then there shouldn't be anything. To think that he was still thinking about whether he could pick up another divine weapon. It seemed like he was overthinking. Although his fantasy was shattered, Yin Nuoxing wasn't too depressed. He also knew that this kind of thing wasn't something that could be obtained just because he wanted it. However, he also saw some slightly higher grade materials. At the very least, there were quite a few fourth-grade materials on the second floor. Moreover, some of them contained very rich earth elemental energy. Seeing that there was no one standing around the giant stone, Yin Nuoxing smiled slightly. He quickly walked over with Xian and Wang Chun. Looking at the weight of the giant stone, Yin Nuoxing's heart skipped a beat. His breathing became irregular for a moment, but he still called someone over and bought it. The old man with white hair walked over. According to Yin Nuoxing's instructions, he cut open the stone, revealing a brown stone the size of a head. Everyone was a little surprised. Such a big stone should weigh about 70 caddies. Like this, the materials for Ling Hong's sword can be considered collected. Gently stroking the brown stone and feeling the pure earth elemental energy, Yin Nuoxing nodded in satisfaction. "Xing Xing, why are you always able to find stones that contain things?" Seeing him happily hugging the stone, Xian curiously pulled at his clothes and asked, "This?" Yin Nuoxing smiled. Seeing that the crowd had left, he covered his right eye with one hand and placed his other hand on Xian's left eye. The evil spirit eye's energy flowed through his right hand and into Xian's left eye. At this moment, the other eye lit up with 5 different colors. The bright colors shined on Xian's beautiful face, making her look extremely beautiful. The change in vision made Xian stare blankly. Then, she saw that the giant stone in front of her gradually became transparent. The things that existed inside were slowly exposed to her eyes. In the end, it became clear that she could see everything. Of course, some things naturally had to be blocked out, X-ray vision. Xian was a little surprised. Satisfied with her surprise, Yin Nuoxing smiled proudly and slowly explained. "Xing Xing, since you have the evil spirit eye and can see through things directly, why do you still want to learn the crystal searching technique?" After hearing this, Xian suddenly understood. However, she was still a little confused. Since there was already a way to search for crystals, why would she still want to find another way? And in that month, she didn't see him use the evil spirit eye to search. Brother is just playful. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Before he could explain, Ming spoke first. "Cough. That's not it. The crystal-seeking technique of the Heaven Meridian Master is the real profession. What I'm using is still an alternative method. Didn't I encounter a situation where the evil spirit couldn't see through the crystal in the Divine Weapon City? Learning the orthodox crystal-seeking technique is just to be safe." Having his goal exposed in an instant, Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. However, he still explained without blushing or panicking. The hand that was rubbing Ming's head slightly exerted a little force. "Brother's bullying me." Feeling the hand on his head exerting force, Ming's little face suddenly collapsed, and he muttered with a little grievance. "Xing Xing, you're still a child." Xian smiled sweetly. In exchange, Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and his handsome face slightly blushed. Xian's eyes inadvertently glanced at the surrounding boulders. When she saw a certain place, she was stunned. She hurriedly tugged at Yin Nuoxing's sleeve and pointed with her jade finger. She carefully transmitted her voice. "Xing Xing, look, there are kanzai characters where..." As soon as these 4 words entered his mind, Yin Nuoxing suddenly turned his head and looked over in a daze. Ever since he saw the historical remains left behind by Tsang, Yin Meteor, and took away her divine right weapon core. He had secretly fully sensed the two words Kanzai. Now that he heard it, he couldn't help but feel a little excited. Looking along the slender jade finger in the corner of the display, there was a black stone that was smaller than the stone beside it. It was only 1 meter tall, and because its appearance was too normal, it was inconspicuous. Not many people came to visit it. If Xian hadn't mentioned it, Yin Nuoxing might not have noticed it. Seal, the evil spirit, I pierced through the thick layer of stone. Yin Nuoxing saw that in the center of the stone, there was indeed a word written. He immediately read the word, but he didn't understand what it meant. Seal. Xian also murmured and repeated it. They looked at each other, and they shook their heads. There was only one word, so there shouldn't be any information. There should be other stones. Thinking of this, Yin Nuoxing hurriedly turned his gaze away from the hall on the 3rd floor and searched carefully. However, the result disappointed him. Other than that inconspicuous black stone, there were no words carved on the other boulders. It seemed like it wasn't here. Looking around, Yin Nuoxing quickly walked up and spoke to the old man beside him. He bought the black stone, but he didn't let anyone cut it open. He directly put it into his pendant. Uncle, which forced open this stone workshop. After successfully buying the black stone, Yin Nuoxing cupped his fists and asked the old man, Divine Stone Workshop? That's the branch of the Qin family's main shop in the Divine Sky City. The elder stroked his white beard and smiled. Perhaps it was because he was in a good mood after completing a business deal. He laughed happily and said, In the Divine Sky City, many forces gather to do business. Due to the unique terrain of the Northern Barren Territory, stone gambling is also a big feature there. In the Divine Sky City, many forces also have their own stone gambling stores. However, that is the main store. In comparison, the price of stone gambling is higher there, and you can play in public. Play in public? Yin Nuoxing and Xian were stunned. What kind of game was that? It's a public gamble. Both sides will search for their own stones and compete against each other. Whoever obtains the most precious item from the stone will be the winner. Those who are watching from the sidelines can also place bets on which side will win. The old man chuckled. Excitement flashed across his eyes. Sounds fun. Yin Nuoxing licked her lips. Xian fell helpless when she saw how eager she was. She knew that Yin Nuoxing's playful heart was aroused again. It's not just fun, it's thrilling. Not only is the Divine Sky City the business base of many forces in the northern wilderness, but many young talents often gather there to gamble in the stone gambling dens. The gold coins or crystals thrown out are in the millions. Because there are no restrictions on entry, almost everyone can enter. As long as you have money, you can bet. Maybe you can even make a fortune. It's like heaven. Seeing that Xian was tempted, the old man became even more excited. His spittle made the two of them take a few steps back. You can even gamble. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing instantly laughed evilly, the corners of his mouth stretching to his cheeks. He didn't have much money on him, and he had squandered a little here, making the situation even worse. Although it wasn't a problem for him to support his daily life, as a cultivator, his expenses were very high. Since Divine Sky City could openly gamble, then he could use the evil spirit essences to extort a sum of money without holding back. Little star expression. It's too wretched. Zai couldn't help but remind him in her heart when she saw his expression. After being despised in his ecstasy, Yin Nuoxing smiled embarrassedly and put away his crescent-shaped mouth. He scratched his head, clasped his fists at the old man, and led the two of them out of the Divine Stone shop. I'm going to Divine Sky City. As soon as they came out, Yin Nuoxing laughed out loud. He didn't hide his emotions at all. Hearing his words, Xian calmly shrugged her shoulders. When they were inside, seeing Yin Nuoxing's expression, she already knew what he was thinking. Now that she heard it, she wasn't too surprised. She only silently mourned for the various factions. She had just witnessed the might of the evil spirit essences. If Yin Nuoxing were to drill into that place, it was really possible that he would make those factions bankrupt. Big brother Yin, you're going to Divine Sky City? I want to go too. Bring me along. Wang Chun was so happy that he jumped up again. No rush, I'll go in a few days. Right now, I still have some things to deal with. Yin Nuoxing smiled. Now that he had gathered all the materials, Ling Hongjian could also advance. Chapter 244. In a mountain range thousands of miles away from the village, the mountain range was surrounded by greenery. As the sun shone, the sky was dyed in a light green color, giving this place more vitality. In a cave that was covered by dense leaves, there was a faint sound of thunder. It also sounded like the sound of rolling waves. Brown energy mist constantly surged out of the cave and spread towards the mountain range. In the cave, Yin Nuoxing was sitting upright. His handsome face was covered in sweat, and it flowed down his chin. The brown light illuminated his face. In front of him, a 2-meter-long silver-blue needle was suspended in midair. Waves of silver blue and brown energy mixed together spread out like water waves. The astonishing energy caused the surrounding space to tremble. Opposite the rock that Yin Nuoxing was sitting cross-legged, a young lady in purple was also sitting cross-legged. Scalding purple flames drilled out of her body and wrapped around Ling Hongjian. The blazing temperature caused the already unstable space to tremble. Waves of brown energy surged in from outside the fire circle. After being refined and purified by the purple night flame, they condensed into balls of brown energy and poured into the silver-blue needle. His soul energy surged out from between his eyebrows and entered Ling Hongjian. He controlled the brown energy that was poured into Ling Hongjian and slowly wrapped it around the silver-blue center. Then, he controlled the energy to cover the array in the sword. The process of upgrading and strengthening was going on at the same time. At this moment, the array was almost 80% brown. Beside the core, there was a small round brown crystal that was about to take shape. After being taught by Purple Knight, Yin Nuoxing naturally knew that the upgrade was about to be completed. Oh, Yin Nuoxing let out a long breath. It had been 3 days since he entered this cave. During this time, he had been upgrading Ling Hongjian. However, the difference between upgrading a divine weapon and an ordinary weapon was not small. For such a difficult task, he naturally needed someone to assist him. Purple Knight jumped out without hesitation. Of course, the main lead was still Yin Nuoxing. After all, he was the only one who had the metal element. However, Ling Hongjian was forged with pure spatial energy. If Purple Knight did not help, he could only watch helplessly. I miss the sunshine outside so much. Yin Nuoxing's murmur entered Zai's ears, and she couldn't help but laugh. She knew that Yin Nuoxing hated the sun, and she could imagine how depressed he was for him to say something like that. After leaving Crystal Rock City and sending Xian and the others back to the village, Yin Nuoxing rushed here in a hurry. As long as Ling Hongjian's matter was not resolved, he would not be able to sit or lie down in peace. Although he was in a hurry to advance, he still practiced before the official start. In the corner of the cave, there were some broken weapons neatly placed. They were obviously the failed products from before. I wonder how strong Ling Hongjian will be after he recovers to the second stage. Yin Nuoxing's eyes constantly swept over the floating Ling Hongjian. She was a little expectant. When Ling Hongjian was still at the first level, he was already able to severely injure a divine underworld expert. If he was at the second level, he might be able to cause some damage to a heavenly deity, right? Thinking of this, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but laugh out loud. Little star, you're still underestimating Ling Hongjian. When he was at the first level, he could already deal with a heavenly deity. It's just that you don't know how to use it. When he's at the second level, killing a heavenly deity won't be a problem. Zai, who was connected to his mind, heard his inner thoughts and laughed. After a moment, she said, however, Ling Hongjian's power can only be maximized by using the power of space to drive it. It's a sword forged by condensing the power of space to the extreme, and only the power of space can perfectly control it. Yin Nuoxing recalled that after Ling Hongjian absorbed the space storm that Yishi condensed, he could even severely injure a peak divine underworld expert. He vaguely felt that Zai was right. However, the power of space was an energy that only a deity could control, and he was currently only a small immortal realm cultivator. Let's not talk about the power of space first. Can you teach me how to use it? Hearing this, Yun Nuashing was a little excited and said in a fawning manner, I'll teach you in the future. Zai stuck out her tongue coquettishly, which made Yun Nuashing a little depressed. Wasn't she whetting his appetite? Buzz. While the two of them were chatting, the array inside Ling Hongjian was completely dyed brown. Beside the core, a round brown crystal had condensed and formed. Suddenly, a vast wave of energy was emitted from the core. Bang! An invisible wave spread out, and when it came into contact with the mountain wall, it actually shattered it. The entire mountain shattered in an instant, turning into gravel that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. The gravel scattered in all directions, and even the trees in the distance were smashed apart. Yin Nuashing hurriedly closed his eyes when his vision suddenly brightened. Before his vision could return to normal, he felt a fragrant wind pounce into his embrace. Then his butt left the rock. When he opened his eyes again, he discovered that Ziyi had carried him and flew into the sky. The deep black clouds above his head enveloped the surrounding 3 kilometers, and the pressure coming from the clouds made him gulp down a mouthful of saliva. What's going on? Looking at the dark clouds that had condensed without him knowing when, Yun Nuashing was a little confused. Then he saw Ling Hongjian floating below the dark clouds. The power of space was overflowing, causing the space to tremble slightly. He had a guess in his heart. Heavenly tribulation. Yes, the advancement of a divine weapon will definitely cause a heavenly tribulation. If it's strengthened too much, it will also cause a heavenly tribulation. Moreover, although the range of this heavenly tribulation is smaller, even the gods and underworld gods will not feel good when facing it. Zai nodded. She held his waist with her jade-like hands and retreated outside the range of the dark clouds. If they were to fight within the range of the heavenly tribulation, they would be implicated and cause a heavenly tribulation that matched their level. If Zai was implicated, although she was a divine flame, she would not be any better off if she encountered it. Moreover, she still had to protect Yin Nuashing. She was fine. Her injuries and whatnot could be healed after a period of rest. However, the latter might directly die. The heavenly tribulation of a divine weapon cannot be resisted by others. It will cause a phenomenon of sharing the heavenly tribulation. Moreover, a divine weapon needs to use the heavenly tribulation to perfect a small flaw in its advancement. If I run in, there will be a small problem. Zai smiled embarrassedly. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing's face twitched a few times. What kind of international joke was this? If you were to get involved, you would have to face the heavenly tribulation of the God Emperor level, right? Moreover, it was a spiritual object of heaven and earth. The terrifying heavenly tribulation would be much stronger. That was a small problem? All right, didn't I bring you out? Hearing his nagging, Zai stuck out her tongue and gently pinched his waist with her jade-like hands. It hurts. The pain in his waist caused Yin Nuashing to tremble all over. He laughed bitterly. I didn't say anything. Why did you pinch me? The thunderbolts that filled the sky revolved around the Ling Hong sword. It was as if a world of thunderbolts had smashed over. However, there was no sound when the two came into contact. The thunderbolts wrapped around the Ling Hong sword and slowly entered the latter's body. It was as if they were being absorbed. Looks like there's no problem. Seeing that nothing was wrong with Ling Hongjian after he absorbed the lightning energy and the silver-blue light on the sword became brighter, Yin Nuashing was relieved. The deafening sound of thunder resounded through the sky, ruthlessly ravaging Yin Nuashing's ears. The flashing light seemed to tear the sky apart. Some black cracks, as thick as an arm, appeared around Ling Hongjian. This made Yin Nuashing a little speechless. This was only a heavenly tribulation of one color, but it was already so powerful. He recalled that when he faced the heavenly tribulation of the God Emperor level, it seemed to be colorful lightning, right? He wondered what would happen if it was Ling Hongjian's heavenly tribulation of the God Emperor level. It's still too early. The heavenly tribulation of the God Emperor level is the most special case. Usually, it will only appear when there are many types of energy resonating at the same time. If you don't have the 5 elements in your body, even if you have the spiritual, godly body, you won't cause the heavenly tribulation of the God Emperor level. At least not now, said Zi. How can you know everything I'm thinking? Hearing her voice, Yin Nuoxing knew that Zi had heard his thoughts again. He suddenly felt a little depressed. Was there still any privacy to speak of? We are the same mind. It's a little strange that I don't know what you're thinking. Hearing this, Zi smiled sweetly and touched Yin Nuoxing's handsome face. She smiled and said, "All right, at most, I won't listen to your thoughts under certain circumstances." What do you mean by certain circumstances? Yin Nuoxing's face twitched a little. He felt that this statement was worth investigating. When you and Zian are whispering sweet nothings to each other, when you're alone, or even, I won't listen. Zi counted with her fingers and smiled. Damn, why are you talking about Zian again? Hearing her mention Zian again, Yin Nuoxing suddenly felt his face become a little hot. Little star, tell me honestly. Zi smiled even more happily when she saw Yin Nuoxing's shy expression. She gently stroked his chest and put her red lips next to his ear. She whispered with a smile, "Is there even a trace of her in your heart?" As soon as this question came out, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He felt a little guilty when he was stared at by Zi's bright light purple eyes. He looked away unnaturally and muttered, How would I know? You really don't know?" Mei Mao narrowed her eyes with a smile. She wanted to force an answer out of him. I don't know." Yin Nuoxing's eyelids twitched rapidly. He felt a little weak in his heart. "Then is there a place for me?" Zi pinched his red cheeks and smiled again. Yes. Yin Nuoxing was flustered. "Forget it. I'm not playing with you anymore." Zi rolled her eyes at him in annoyance when she heard him answering her question with a question. She slowly retreated from his body. Yin Nuoxing stuck out his tongue. Zi was really too much. She kept asking questions about his feelings. Wasn't she purely trying to embarrass him? Boom. While the two of them were flirting, the pitch-black clouds in the sky flickered with abnormally ferocious lightning. The lightning bolt that was thousands of feet long was like a ferocious beast as it plunged down towards Ling Hongjian. The violent power of the lightning swept out and filled the entire sky. A large area of space shattered. Countless black spatial cracks spread out like a giant mouth that could swallow people whole. The two of them who were fooling around in the distance were shocked. The moment Ziyi reacted, she hurriedly grabbed Yin Nuoxing and flew into the distance. They escaped the chaotic energy field before the shock waves reached them. The thousands of feet long lightning bolt struck the ground. The silver-blue pillar of light that connected the heavens and the earth lit up the space within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. Even Zian and Ziyi, who were far away in the small village, felt an inexplicable surge of energy that made their hearts tremble. Ling Hongjian won't explode, right? They looked at the oasis beneath their feet that had been shattered in an instant. The forest within a radius of nearly 1,000 miles had also been flattened into an endless expanse of flat land. The ground was so flat that there were no obstacles at all. Ling Hongjian is a divine weapon after all. You think that the mere power of lightning can destroy it? You're underestimating them too much. Zi sneered. Since ancient times, I've never heard of any method that could destroy a divine weapon. Of course, perhaps no one has tried it before. Yin Nuoxing laughed bitterly. Divine weapons were all treasures. Who would be willing to take them out to study how to destroy them? The lightning bolt that filled the sky only lasted for a few minutes before dissipating. The dark clouds in the sky also gradually dissipated. Looking at the land that had been ravaged by lightning energy, Yin Nuoxing let out a dry cry. If he had been hit by the overflowing energy just now, his soul would probably have been scattered. The dust that filled the sky slowly settled after a long while. In the clear sky, there were no clouds for thousands of miles. Only a slender silver needle that emitted a dazzling silver-blue light was left floating in the air. It was very conspicuous in the clear sky. Buzz. After staying in the same spot for a long time, Ling Hongjian slowly retracted its light. Then, it turned into a silver bolt of lightning and appeared in front of Yun Nuoxing in a few flashes. It even circled around him in a very human-like manner. After pausing for a while, it burrowed into his arm. As soon as Ling Hongjian burrowed into his body, Yun Nuoxing felt that it seemed to have strengthened a lot. At that moment, he was slightly delighted. However, what happened next stunned him. He saw that the colorful pattern on his arm that had been still for a long time actually glowed. Then, a part of the colorful pattern actually slowly grew. Ling Hongjian has leveled up. Its power is even greater than before. It's not surprising that the pattern has grown. Ziyi bent down with interest and stared at Mei Mao. He watched closely as the pattern continued to grow. In the end, it only stopped when it covered half of his forearm. You should be glad. The pattern of the divine body will expand as the item in the body strengthens. Didn't I say before that the pattern of the divine body will cover the entire body? Ziyi couldn't help but purse his lips and smile when he saw the gloomy look on his face. How am I supposed to face others? Yun Nuoxing roared in grief and anger when he heard that. Chapter 245. There shouldn't be any problems now, right? Yun Nuoxing smiled helplessly as he patted his arms and slightly glowing chest. This trip had really exhausted him, and he didn't even have time to rest. Well, the divine weapon is very stable once it recovers to level 7. It won't advance so easily. As for now, I still need you to put in more effort. Zai laughed in his heart. No. He knelt down and let out a long cry. As soon as he returned to the village and pushed open the door of the stone house, Yun Nuoxing saw Xian and Ming sitting opposite each other on the bed. When they saw him return, they were stunned for a moment before they hurriedly rushed over. Xingxing, are you okay? Is Ling Hongjian all right? Xian asked a little worriedly when she saw his somewhat tired, handsome face. Ming also directly jumped into Yun Nuoxing's arms. She wrapped her little arms around his neck and asked with concern, Big brother, are you okay? I'm fine. Ling Hongjian is fine too. Yun Nuoxing waved his hand and smiled as he touched Ming's soft purple-black hair. He looked at the deep purple Mei Mao's eyes that were filled with concern and felt a slight warmth in his heart. When he thought of Zai's question just now, his face couldn't help but turn red. He hurriedly coughed dryly and disappeared before he was discovered. He walked to the bedside and changed the topic. He pulled Xian to the bedside and sat down on the hard stone chair as he asked with a smile, What happened? Why did you look so serious just now? Well, Xian sighed when she heard Yun Nuoxing mention this. She twirled a strand of her long hair a few times with her jade fingers and slowly said, Xingxing, how much money do you have left? Money? Yun Nuoxing was stunned. He calculated in his heart and said, I have less than 40 million left, right? The previous expenses were a little high, so I didn't even calculate when I was using it. Why? What do you need money for? Yun Nuoxing asked with a smile. No, it's just that Ming and I were just settling a debt. Xingxing, you're going to travel all over the God Realm, so you can't always choose to do it by yourself, right? Plus, you'll have to spend a lot of money on the road, just like the money you use to buy materials for Ling Hongjian. Xian shook her head helplessly. Just now, when Ming asked her to do some calculations, she realized that the cost of this trip was actually quite high. I'm fine. It's just money. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing was not worried at all. Instead, she laughed out loud and patted Ming's back. Although we are a little poor now, didn't we agree to go to the Divine Sky City? In any case, with the evil spirit eye, I won't lose. Moreover, he had hidden a large pile of holy grade Xian crystals. Xianyin had also given him a pile of materials. If he had no other choice, he could use them to auction. It should cause a stir. I think I can. Is there anything I can help with? Hearing this, Xian was startled. She had forgotten about Yun Nuoxing, the divine tool to get rich. When she came back to her senses, she stuck out her tongue and smiled. You, looking at the hopeful Mei Mao, Yun Nuoxing was startled. It seemed like she really wanted to help her. However, there was really nothing she could help with at the moment, and she could not directly say that he was here for her five elements body. There's nothing I can help with. Sister, you can just hide behind me and be a beautiful girl. Yun Nuoxing thought. No, that's too silly. There's a price for helping you. Sister, why don't you use your body? Damn, what am I thinking? Yun Nuoxing's face turned red, and she almost sent the stone house flying. Scratching her head in distress, Yun Nuoxing stared at the Maimao. After thinking for a long time, she made up her mind. Seeing Xian's blushing face, she reached out her hand and patted her head. Smiling gently, he said, "In the future, Xian will definitely be able to help me." When he did this, Yun Nuoxing felt that his face was boiling hot. However, he still calmly finished speaking. Her soft hair brushed against his palm, making him feel very comfortable. Xian was a little confused by his actions. She nodded blankly. Other than her family, he was the only one who had done this before. It felt a little different. The two of them looked at each other shyly. The atmosphere was a little ambiguous. The atmosphere is pretty good. The relationship between the two of them has improved. This is a good sign. If this continues, one day, I'll be able to hug little Star and Xian's baby. He. In Yun Nuoxing's spiritual world, Zai, who had been paying close attention to the two of them, wrote down the date and location in a book in her hand. She recorded this down and then giggled. She switched her line of sight to the book. There were many dates and many things written in it. Although they were not big or small events, without exception, they all revolved around Yun Nuoxing and Xian. If Yun Nuoxing saw this little book, she would probably burn it to ashes. The next day, Yun Nuoxing and the others woke up early. The sun had just risen from the top of the mountain, and the orange light had just shone on the village. At this time, many people in the village had already woken up and were busy working. Wisps of smoke rose from the chimneys of every household. They were not in a hurry to fly towards Divine Sky City. Yun Nuoxing and the others went to Wang Chen's house. He had promised to take them around Divine Sky City, so he naturally would not go back on his word. However, as soon as they entered Wang Chen's house, Yun Nuoxing and the others were warmly pulled to sit down by the Queen Mother. She kept thanking him for helping to take care of Wang Chun and even invited him to eat breakfast. Only then did she send them out and remind them to be careful. Your mother is so enthusiastic. Feeling the Queen Mother's enthusiasm, Yun Nuoxing could not help but wipe the sweat off his forehead. He was a little overwhelmed. Hearing this, Wang Chun laughed out loud. Then, he looked curiously and excitedly at the sun god bow under his butt and could not help but praise it. Divine Sky City was tens of millions of miles away from the village. It was a long journey, and they had to bring along someone who could not fly. Even if they used the sun god bow, it would still take some time to travel through the night. Divine Sky City is the center of the northern wilderness. Xingxing, you came from outside the Divine Lands, so you don't know the general distribution of the Divine Lands. There are 4 central cities in the Divine Lands: Divine Sky City in the northern wilderness, Wanyuan City in the southern wilderness, Sea God's Domain in the eastern sea, and Meteor City in the western domain. They're all top cities in the Great Divine Lands. Knowing that Yun Nuoxing was not familiar with the distribution of the cities, Xian explained in detail. Actually, there's someone who left our village in Divine Sky City. He came back a few years ago. I don't know if we can find him in the city. Wang Chen also smiled. You know someone? Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing was slightly happy. Yes, a few years ago, a college came to the oasis to recruit students. At that time, someone from our village was chosen. They said that he was talented, so they took him away. A few years ago, they came back and said that he was living in Divine Sky City now. Wang Chen thought for a while and said, "Oh." Yun Nuoxing nodded and took out the treasure map. Seeing that there was no problem with the direction, she closed her eyes and rested in peace. They crossed countless mountains and flew across endless deserts. It only took them 10 days to travel tens of millions of miles. On the way, many people saw the golden lightning that flew across the sky and hurried towards the northeast. Divine Sky City had a radius of tens of thousands of miles. It was a comfortable and lush forest, and its scale was hundreds of thousands of miles. It was so big that it seemed to be boundless. It seemed to be even bigger than Xingming City. The oasis where the Divine Sky City was located was the largest and calmest oasis in the Northern Barren Territory. There were no small cities around it. Only the Divine Sky City stood in the center of the oasis. Many powerful forces had set up their bases here. After leaving the desert, the temperature dropped slightly. Although it was close to autumn and the smell of the end of summer had not dissipated, there was already a slight chill here. Yin Nuoxing and the others also changed out of their cool white robes. The spacious road meandered through the forest, allowing hundreds of horses to travel side by side. From time to time, a gust of wind would blow through the air, blowing the people below to the left and right. Immediately, there were sounds of cursing, but when they looked up and saw the strange beasts, they suddenly fell silent. In the sky, Xian lay on the edge of the sun god bow. Mei Mao stared at the road below and said softly, "So many people. We're not far from Divine Sky City. Let's play a parachute." The sun god bow is too eye-catching. Yin Nuoxing smiled and said, "Parachute?" Xian and Wang Chun were stunned. How are they going to parachute? Hee. Yin Nuoxing smiled evilly. Before the two of them could react, she hugged Ming and Xian in her arms and carried Wang Chun with one hand. Then, she stepped on the bowstring with both feet. With a thought, the sun god bow was automatically pulled to its full length. Wang Chun was stunned and reacted half a beat slower. Xing, wait. Don't. Xian was the first to react. She was so scared that her pretty face turned pale. However, before she could say anything, "Okay, human bow shoot." Yin Nuoxing laughed and tightened her arm around Xian. With a thought, the bowstring was pulled, and the four of them flew straight towards Divine Sky City like an arrow. Ah! The ear-piercing sound of the explosion was mixed with Wang Chen's shrill scream. There was a dragon head made of stone on the 100-meter-tall city gate. The bronze city wall stretched into the distance. It looked like a huge dragon crawling on the ground. The city wall was as smooth as a mirror. There were no traces of rain erosion, but one could feel an ancient feeling from it. There are so many people. Standing 100 meters away from the city wall, she looked at the people coming and going at the city gate. The noise was intertwined. Yin Nuoxing felt a little dizzy when the noise entered her ears like magic. Blurg. Wang Chen's face was pale. He held onto a tree and vomited. His stomach was churning. Vomit. You'll feel better after you spit it out. Yin Nuoxing straightened his face, patted him on the shoulder, and said lightly, "Xing." At this moment, even Xian, who was used to traveling at close to the speed of light, couldn't take it anymore. She collapsed weakly in Yin Nuoxing's arms. Her pretty face was slightly pale, and she looked pitiful. This could be seen from the gazes that were directed at them. Big Brother is naughty. Ming was the only one who was fine. After all, she had been with Yin Nuoxing for a long time. What kind of traveling method had she not tried? Ha! Yin Nuoxing laughed awkwardly when she heard this. Well, you'll get used to it. Yin Nuoxing smiled and patted Xian's head as a green light flickered on his fingertips. The gentle wood element entered Xian's mind through his fingers and calmed down the dizziness. After using the same method to deal with Wang Chun, Yin Nuoxing clapped her hands and smiled happily. Let's go and see what's so great about Divine Sky City. Chapter 246. In the spacious Divine Sky City, there were rows upon rows of buildings. Every few steps, they would see a huge palace in front of them, all exuding an aura of glory and prosperity. The palace in the sky is a tea house, and the palace on the ground is a restaurant. One word, expensive, and one word, extremely luxurious. Yin Nuoxing gave this evaluation after taking a small stroll around Divine Sky City. Even though he was very picky, he couldn't help but be amazed by the luxury of this place. Wang Chun, where's the person you were talking about? Yin Nuoxing turned around and asked. He had just arrived in Divine Sky City and was unfamiliar with the place, so he had to find someone to understand the situation first. Let me think. Where is Liao Tiange? Wang Chen frowned and thought for a while. Liao Tiange, a force? Yun Nuoxing also frowned and looked around, but he couldn't find any sign of this force. After all, Divine Sky City was too big, and looking for something on the streets was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Uncle, where is Liao Tiange? He had no choice but to ask a passerby. Kid, is this your first time in Divine Sky City? You didn't even know where Liao Tiange is? The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows and looked at Yun Nuoxing. He pointed to a spot in the sky and said, "There, just over there. You will know after walking 5 streets." Yun Nuoxing cupped his hands and ran in that direction with the others. Very few people could fly in Divine Sky City, so Yun Nuoxing and the others naturally wouldn't fly. However, with Yun Nuoxing and the others' strength, even if they didn't fly, it wouldn't take them too long to walk through a few streets. When they passed by a corner and raised their heads, even with his mental fortitude, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. A silver-white palace floated in the sky, with hundreds of stairs extending from the platform below. An ancient aura poured down from the sky, and at the top of the palace, the words Liao Tiange were especially eye-catching. If one flew in the sky, it would be difficult to miss it. Wow, so domineering. Yun Nuoxing touched his face and said with a dry mouth, "This palace was built in the sky. Is it a good idea to just go up like this? Shouldn't we greet them at their doorstep first?" A moment later, Wang Chun followed Yun Nuoxing up the long and slender steps. However, the former was a little uneasy. In his opinion, this was already considered the territory of the other party. Would it be taboo to casually enter? It's okay. Anyway, there's no sign that says private territory, no entry at the bottom of the stairs. It shouldn't be a problem for us to walk around. Besides, we're just going to look for someone, not steal anything. Why are you so nervous? Yun Nuoxing laughed when she saw Wang Chen's timid look. Liao Tiange was tens of thousands of feet tall, and his entire body was a silver palace. Moreover, it should be a world of its own. Through the evil spirit eye, Yun Nuoxing saw traces of spatial fluctuations. The real Liao Tiange should not be as big as a palace. As expected, it's not as simple as a palace. Her outstretched palm touched something in the void. No matter how much force she used, she could not move it at all. When her evil spirit eye saw that her palm had touched a transparent barrier, Yun Nuoxing smiled slightly. She did not do anything useless. She simply took out her Linghong sword and gently slashed it at the barrier in front of her. Then, with a push of her palm, the barrier opened up a gap the size of a door. "Let's go." Yun Nuoxing laughed and took the lead to walk in. As soon as they passed through the barrier, the scene in front of them suddenly changed. The Silver Palace was rooted on a huge floating continent. There were plains and mountains, and a sea of flowers alternated. A gentle breeze blew, and countless petals danced in the wind. In the distance, the white clouds and the blue sky seemed to be the same color. 1 or 2 birds flew across the sky from time to time. It was like a paradise on earth. The back garden. This was Yun Nuoxing's first impression of this place. It did not look like a holy land for cultivation at all. Instead, it looked more like a place for leisure and tourism. "It's so beautiful," said Xian in surprise as Mei Mao sized up this self-made world. After coming in, Wang Chun looked around and fumbled in his clothes for a while. Then, he slowly took out a silver token and crushed it with force. Not long after the token was crushed, a figure rushed out of the Silver Palace. The figure paused in the sky for a while before flying in the direction of Yun Nuoxing. In a few blinks of an eye, the figure appeared in front of them. The silver figure slowly landed, revealing a handsome face with a simple and honest expression. His bronze skin looked full of strength. A pair of black eyes stared at Yun Nuoxing the moment he appeared. His silver robes swayed gently in the wind, and he had a smile on his face. When he saw Wang Chun, he could not help but laugh. "Hee, little Chun, you're here. You've grown up. Big brother Lu Yi." Seeing this person, Wang Chen also laughed and introduced him. Big Brother Lu Yi, this is Big Brother Yin. He's the one who saved our village. Hearing that, the smile on Lu Ye's face deepened. He held onto Yun Nuoxing's hand passionately and said with a smile, I've long heard of Brother Yun's name. Seeing you today, you really live up to your reputation. I'll first thank Yun Nuoxing for his kindness. Brother, you're flattering me. Hearing that, Yun Nuoxing could not help but laugh and said, Big Brother Lu, we've come to Divine Sky City today. You're more familiar with this place. Introduce it to us, Wang Chen said with a smile. Lu Yi naturally would not reject such a small request. He smiled and nodded. Then, under the shocked gazes of the few people, he flew back into the palace. However, he flew back out after a short while with a silver pendant in front of his chest. Seeing the confused gazes of the few people, Lu Yi smiled foolishly and said, I just went to ask for leave from the elders. Yun Nuoxing nodded in understanding. Seeing that he had walked out of this world first, he also followed closely behind with Xian and the others. Little brother, is there anywhere you want to go? Lu Yi asked after coming out of Liao Tiange. Divine Sky City was so big that it was impossible to visit all of it. In a short period of time, they naturally had to go to some very meaningful places. There's nothing in particular that I want to go. Just bring us around the city. Let's also take a look at some of the stone gambling dens. Yin Nuoxing pondered for a moment before replying. His heart was still tangled up with the God's Generation text that he had seen in Crystal Rock City. However, the only clue he had was that it came from the Qin family, but he did not know where the Qin family stone gambling hall was. The stone gambling den? Hearing this, Lu Yi nodded and slowly planned a route in his heart. He led the group of people from Yun Nuo planet around the streets and explained along the way, there are countless forces gathered in the Divine Sky City. There are all kinds of people here. No matter who you see, don't judge a book by its cover. Maybe a weak young master who looks like a coward is the grandson of an elder of a big force. Or maybe he is a senior who is already very old. He might even be able to step on the feet of a god. Divine Sky City has existed for a very long time. It is said that it has existed since the Dark Age. At that time, in order to resist the attack of the demon race, the city walls were built very hard. Although it does not look as safe as some cities with high walls, in times of danger, it can still mobilize a trace of the god's power that the god left in the city. It can be said to be impregnable. This is also the reason why you can't fly outside Divine Sky City. If you fly within 1,000 miles, you will feel a great pressure. This is the influence of the god's power that the god left behind. In Divine Sky City, the top seedlings of many big forces, god's sons and goddesses, will appear here. Most of them are the chosen heirs of their forces. Our Liao Tiange's godsons and goddesses are also playing in some corner of the city. If you're lucky, you might see them. Look, Lu Yi suddenly pointed to the sky. A huge palace that covered a large area with shadows floated in the sky. The entire palace was golden, and it really explained what was called golden splendor. This is the biggest auction house in Divine Sky City, the Golden Jade Palace. Of course, it is not wrong to say that it is the biggest auction house in the northern wilderness. This auction house belongs to the gold. Hearing this word, Yun Nuoxing immediately thought of the Gold Divine Palace and said, Gold Divine Palace? Yes, it is the Gold Divine Palace. Hearing this, Lu Yi looked at him with a bit of surprise. Then, she continued with a smile. In the auction house, there are some rare items that appear in the auction house from time to time. For example, Holy Xian crystals, strengthening materials above the 8th level, God-level crystals, God-level weapons, God-level armor, and so on. Every time they appear, it will cause a huge uproar in Divine Sky City. Some big forces will even fight for them until their faces turn red. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing's eyelids twitched rapidly. What a wastrel! Why not keep the God-level items for themselves when they are auctioning them? Over there, across the street, there are stone gambling houses. There are stone gambling houses from the 9 great elemental temples to the 8 ancient families. There are also some unknown forces that are not weaker than them. They all do business here. After all, in the northern wilderness, the most sold items are Shin crystals and materials. Lu Yi pointed to the manors across the street and introduced them one by one. Yin Nuoxing was a bit speechless. Palaces were not enough, but manors? The restaurant of the demon mystic sect, the clothing city of the Mi Sheng Pavilion from the Divine Prefecture. Damn it, even the city is here? Yin Nuoxing complained fiercely. And there, Lu Yi smiled helplessly and pointed to a palace on the lake that was decorated with red lights and green wine. No, it was decorated with the fragrance of flowers. The scale of the palace was not small at all compared to those big restaurants, and so on. What is that? Yin Nuoxing was stunned and asked when she heard that he stopped talking. Lu Yi rubbed her hands and carefully glanced at Ziyin, whose pretty face was filled with curiosity. Then, she looked at Yin Nuoxing and said in a low voice, "Hee, sister-in-law is here. It's hard for me to say cough." As soon as she said this, Yin Nuoxing and Ziyin coughed violently at the same time. Their beautiful faces suddenly turned red. Then, they looked at Lu Yi shyly and said in unison, "It's not like that, big brother, sister-in-law. Don't be shy. In our village, it's not uncommon for people of this age to be married." Lu Yi laughed and said when she heard the two say the same thing. Obviously, although Yin Nuoxing and Ziyin looked like they were only 15 or 16 years old, they had already regarded them as a married couple. It's really not like that. When the two heard this, they panicked even more. They hurriedly waved their hands to explain, but they found that the more they explained, the worse it became. Seeing Lu Yi laughing like that, the two could only lower their heads. They didn't know what to say. It wasn't until Wang Chan came forward to explain that Lu Yi looked at the two of them in surprise and then looked at the palace on the lake. "That's the drunken, immortal restaurant." Lu Yi laughed softly. "Where is it?" Hearing these three words, Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes and Wang Chan shyly turned his head away. Only Ziyin asked in confusion. His curious look made people unable to bear answering this question. "Big brother, where's this place?" Coincidentally, Ming also asked this question at this time, making Yin Nuoxing and the other two men a little ashamed. They didn't know how to answer without hurting this cute little girl's heart. "It's that place." Lu Yi scratched her head and finally used the method of hinting. "That place." Ziyin tilted her head, indicating that she didn't understand. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched a few times. She helplessly smiled bitterly, put her mouth close to Ziyin's delicate ear, and whispered. Then he saw that the beautiful face was covered in blood in an instant. It was so red that it could even drip blood. When Lu Yi saw this, she could only carefully smile and look at it. "Big brother?" Seeing Ziyin like this, Ming was even more curious. "Ming, that's just a place to eat." Her beautiful eyes glared at Yin Nuoxing, who was glancing at her in the sky. Ziyin quickly calmed her state of mind, rubbed Ming's head with her jade-like hand, and laughed softly. "Oh!" Blinking his large eyes, Ming nodded his head, indicating that he understood. Everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 247. There were many people standing by the shore of the huge lake. The lush forest surrounded the drunken fragrance lake. There were many people coming and going here, and they all had one thing in common. They would stay by the shore for a long time, not leaving for a long time. Many big boats inlaid with precious stones and crystals were drifting on the lake. Occasionally, the people on the boats would look at the people on the other boats and talk. Most of these people were young elites. If they had a book in their hands, they would look like scholars, making people think of those wandering poets. The Drunken Fragrance Restaurant is one of the 9 famous brothels in the Divine Sky City. Brother Yin, you might find it strange, but it's not surprising that there are such places in the Divine Sky City. After all, cultivators are humans too. They're not gods without desires who want to indulge themselves in the mortal world. That's why there are such places. Furthermore, the Drunken Fragrance Restaurant is not a building, but a force. Although it doesn't have a good reputation, its strength is still one of the best. It's said that many big forces are related to them. Lu Yi thought for a while and continued. According to our Liao Tinga's elder, those god-level seedlings all have an unbreakable relationship with a young lady in the restaurant. Furthermore, in the Divine Sky City, it's not just strength that ranks the top 3. The brothels, they're also some of the best. As Lu Yi said this, there was some expectation in his eyes, as if he really wanted to go in and take a look. All the forces are related to them. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing was a little stunned. He thought that only some ordinary people would go to this kind of place. Most cultivators cared about their own face, so they shouldn't go to these places. However, the news he heard today almost overturned his worldview. Because of this, he wanted to say one thing. The riches circle was really messy. Suddenly, cheerful and beautiful music floated on the surface of the lake. It was as if the world was full of wind chimes playing. It was as if 100 phoenixes were playing together, as if 100 birds were paying homage to the phoenix. It was also as if a wonderful sound from the immortal world was transmitted into people's hearts, making them feel intoxicated. Yun Nuoxing pursed her lips when she saw that everyone had their eyes closed as if they were enjoying themselves. She mumbled, "It's not as good as playing the strings." During the 1 year they spent together, Xianyin would play softly by his side whenever she was free. That was the true divine melody. It was as if the great Tao world was playing together, but it was not noisy at all. Instead, it was clear and pleasant to the ear. How could the music here compare to it? "Oh, this feels so good." After a long time, the music slowly stopped. Only then did Lu Yi let out a moan. It was as if her heart had melted from the music. Chu Ilian, it should be her. Rumor has it that there's a disciple in the Drunken Immortal Tower whose music is said to be the best in the Divine Sky City. She's also a rare beauty who's capable of causing the downfall of a city. Many disciples from different forces have come for her. Lu Yi patted her chest, as if she was reminiscing about the music just now. Huh. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing chuckled. She looked directly at Xian at the side and laughed in her heart. No matter how beautiful she is, can she be as beautiful as Xian? Haha, little star, why is your first reaction comparing Xian to her? Suddenly, Zi laughed in his heart as well, causing his face to twitch. In the drunken immortal lake, fog curled around. A colorful light boat floated on the lake, and some intoxicating music faintly floated out. There was a blurry figure on it. Although it was covered by fog, one could vaguely see the figure of a young girl. Most of the people present were cultivators. Although there was fog, it wasn't a big problem for them. Their eyes could see through the fog, and they could clearly see the young girl's appearance. She sat quietly on the light boat. Her tight, white clothes accentuated her slender waist in a soul-stirring manner. Her fine black hair danced behind her back. Her stunning face was suffused with a tranquil indifference. A silver-white headband accentuated her cuteness. Her slender, jade-like hands gently swept across the harp in front of her. Her entire being appeared like a flawless fairy. However, her beautiful eyes had never opened, making them less attractive. She's not as good-looking as Xian. Through the evil spirit eye, Yun Nuoxing looked at her curiously. Suddenly, she couldn't help but clap her hands and exclaim. Although this young girl had her own charm, she was still a little lacking compared to Xian. However, she could still be compared. However, the main point seemed to be, "Big brother Yun, you said what's on your mind?" Seeing Xian's blushing face, Wang Qin couldn't help but poke Yun Nuoxing with his finger. He knew that the latter had accidentally said something terrible. Ah! After being poked in the waist by Wang Qin, Yun Nuoxing finally reacted. He covered his mouth with his hand and stared blankly at Ziyan. Seeing Ziyan's blood-red face and her beautiful eyes that were occupied by shyness, he suddenly felt sweaty. He didn't expect that he couldn't help but spit out what he was thinking. Ziyan, Yun Nuoxing wanted to clarify to prevent the misunderstanding from deepening. Thank you, Xing Xing. However, Ziyan's complexion suddenly returned to normal. That crimson red disappeared without a trace. Her beautiful eyes blinked at him, and she even cutely stuck out her little tongue. Seeing Ziyan's reaction, Yun Nuoxing knew that this misunderstanding didn't need to be clarified. Lu Yi saw the two of them and couldn't help but laugh bitterly. This was the most suitable yet awkward couple he had ever seen. Thinking of this, he carefully looked at Xian and then at the person hidden in the fog. He couldn't help but shake his head. Yin Nuoxing wasn't wrong. At least, Xian's figure was better than the latter's. This must be Chu Ilian. I've heard of her long ago. She's talented and beautiful. In the whole northern wasteland, the whole divine continent, no, in the whole god realm, it's hard to find such a beauty. It's a pity that she was born in this sect. In this life, she's destined to not be able to come out clean. Some people were discussing, seemingly very regretful. After all, the drunken immortal house didn't have a good reputation. This had nothing to do with strength. If there was anything to do with it, it would be the two words, wind and moon. Once you've embarked on this path, there's no turning back. However, even though she was born in such a sect, the beautiful Chu Ilian didn't have a trace of dust. She was untainted by the mud, pure and clean. The ethereal, immortal aura that filled her whole body made her seem like a fairy that had fallen to the mortal world. She could be seen from afar, but couldn't be touched. She was otherworldly and holy. Yin Nuoxing sighed. No matter how good her temperament was, she was still a chess piece. It was just a matter of how much influence she had. In this kind of sect, there were no so-called human rights to speak of. Everyone only cared about how much benefit they could get from a girl. In the end, Chu Ilian couldn't avoid this principle. He felt that the immortal indulgence and had made use of the psychology of seeking novelty in the hearts of the people. They insisted on lighting up a lamp in a dark place, insisted on building a tall tower in a bottomless valley, insisted on creating a pure and holy celestial maiden that didn't eat the food of the mortal world. Is this sarcasm or contrast? Yin Nuoxing murmured, making everyone silent for a moment. But Father once said, a hero doesn't ask where he comes from. In a dark place, there's always a bright lamp. At the end of despair, there's always a little hope. In the darkest front, there's always a light. Xian thought for a moment and said softly, is it? Perhaps it's like this. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing nodded and didn't say anything else. Xian saw his tacit agreement and opened her small mouth. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she swallowed it back. She stared at him with her bright eyes and laughed softly in her heart. Because, Star, you're the lamp that illuminates me in the dark. Perhaps he didn't realize that after knowing him, even her personality had changed a lot. The colorful light boat slowly floated in the air. Under the colorful light, it was as if there was a jade palace, a piece of ethereal mist. The sound of nature came from the colorful light in the mist. It was clear and elegant, as if it was engraved in the bones, but it was also ethereal and untraceable. Under the moonlight, the sound of the zither floats. As if the words were precious, the wonderful sound of the zither came from a mist, causing an uproar among the people by the lake. Tonight, Chu Ilian was going to play under the moonlight. She was one of the most beautiful girls in the divine prefecture, and her name was known all over the world. Perhaps the drunken immortal lake would be full of people tonight. Let's go. The highlight is tonight. To be honest, I've lived in the divine sky city for so long, but I've never seen Fairy Chu play in person. This time, we definitely can't miss it. Hearing the heartwarming sound, Lu Yi was intoxicated for a moment, then laughed out loud, as if she was looking forward to the zither banquet tonight. Yes, let's go. Yin Nuoxing nodded. He also came to take a look with some curiosity. Walking on the bustling street, the hawkers on the street were all trying their best to sell. It could be said that they were exaggerating. Even Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but take a second look. Although these goods were more or less exaggerated, he also realized that there were some good things among them. Flame crystal stone, level 3 material, exquisite jade, level 4 herb, jade lotus bottle, immortal level dharma artifact. Yin Nuoxing's eyes quickly swept through the stalls. He found many things that caught his eye. He also needed to collect some level 3 to level 7 materials now. After all, Ling Hongjian still needed to continue to advance. Moreover, other than Ling Hongjian, there was also the Netherworld Ruin Sword that had mysteriously disappeared. Even if it was just for these two divine weapons, he had to spend some money. However, although there was a need, he didn't buy it directly. He went around a few stalls and compared the goods. After a long time, he stopped at a small stall. The price-performance ratio seemed to be higher. Then, he haggled for a while before he put it in his pocket contentedly. If you don't have too much confidence, I don't recommend you go to the big stone gambling dens to gamble. After all, those grand places look very luxurious. The stones inside are all carefully selected before being displayed. If you don't have a good eye, it's very easy to buy stone eggs that have nothing. Walking to a slightly quieter place, Liu Yi pointed at those huge palaces and said, "Scam money?" Yin Nuoxing was stunned. They were all selected before they were sold. Wasn't this a scam? That's not entirely the case. There are different levels of stone gambling inside. Although most of them have already been tested, there are still people who have found good things inside. There was once a holy grade Xian crystal. That force's face turned green, Liu Yi said with a smile. Holy level mysterious crystal. Hearing the name, Yin Nuoxing stuck out his tongue. He also had this kind of thing, but he didn't know if there was a divine level mysterious crystal. Where can I get the money quickly? Tilting his head, Yin Nuoxing asked. He wasn't very interested in the materials. If they weren't too rare, he wasn't in a hurry to collect them. He just needed to store 180 pounds of them. Moreover, he was mainly here for the money. Open go. Go to those big forces, those manors just across the street. There are often people gambling. It's a good choice to go there now. Liu Yi thought and said, Roar. We must gamble until they go bankrupt. Yin Nuoxing smiled evilly. Chapter 248. Night fell slowly. Countless stars hung in the sky. The night sky was full of stars. Under this starlight, even Divine Sky City was dyed with some fluorescence. It looked very beautiful from 10 miles away. Yin Nuoxing felt that there was an extra type of energy in his body. He was slightly shocked. He sensed it and realized that this energy was very mysterious. It was vast and boundless, but also very weak. Specks of light lit up outside his body, just like the Divine Sky City that was stained with starlight. It was so bright that it was dazzling. He lowered his head slowly and turned his palm twice. After looking at it carefully for a while, he murmured, "This is the power of the stars, huh?" Seeing him suddenly stop in his tracks, Liu Yi and the others were stunned. They turned their heads in confusion and were a little stunned to see that Yin Nuoxing was wrapped in a ball of fluorescent light. Specks of energy floated on the surface of his body, looking like a different kind of charm. The spiritual, godly body could contain all the energy in the world. It was very sensitive to energy. Although Xian and the others did not feel it, Yin Nuoxing could sense this weak power of the stars very clearly. Also, this weak power of the stars seemed to be attracted to him unintentionally. Speaking of which, every night when the stars appear in the night sky, Divine Sky City will absorb the power of the stars. The faint fluorescence will light up the sky. Even if there are no lights, the entire city will be very bright. Therefore, Divine Sky City is also called the City of Stars, Liu Yi said. No wonder. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing suddenly understood. Although the spiritual, godly body could absorb the power of the stars, the starry sky was too far away after all. The power of the stars seeped down and was diluted in the vast space. It was very difficult for a little bit of the power to land on the inhabited land. Even if this little bit was absorbed, it was equivalent to nothing. However, the power of the stars gathered in Divine Sky City was the brightest at night. The power of the stars, which was difficult for ordinary people to come into contact with, was indeed very abundant here. That was why Yin Nuoxing could absorb it. The immortal qi in my body seems to have become much purer. It even has the unique aura of the stars. Yin Nuoxing was a little surprised as he looked at his body that was becoming brighter. At this moment, he was like a luminous pearl that was emitting a bright light on the street. There's no need to light up the lamp. Little Star has really become a star this time. Violet Knight noticed this and couldn't help but laugh. After being teased by Ziyi, Yin Nuoshing rolled his eyes. This had nothing to do with him. The power of the stars had surged over on its own. He didn't even try to control it, nor was he able to control it. What could he do? Ordinary people won't have any special reaction when they touch the star power. It's because you have the receiving spirit godly body. This kind of body is very sensitive to energy. It will automatically absorb the pure energy into your body, Ziyi said. Speaking of which, when I went to find you, the star power entered my body. At that time, Jin Jinwang even asked me if I had some kind of body. At that time, I thought I was just a mortal body. Yin Nuoshing suddenly smiled bitterly. Well, after all, you are a god. You still have a corresponding eyesight. You, on the other hand, were you shocked when you found out that you have the receiving spirit godly body? Ziyi laughed. No, I was dumbfounded because I had never heard of it. At that time, I didn't even know about the so-called body. It was only after I found out that I had the receiving spirit godly body that I slowly came into contact with this kind of thing. Yin Nuoshing shook his head and squeezed his palms. He felt that his strength had improved a little. Although it's a good thing to improve your strength, this is too eye-catching. Yin Nuoshing smiled bitterly and stopped walking. He looked around. Many people on the street stopped to look at this humanoid object that was emitting fluorescent light. They didn't understand what had happened, but it made him smile bitterly. Wasn't this making things difficult for him? Let's go. Ignore it. Hearing Yin Nuoshing's bitter smile, Lu Yi reacted and hurriedly asked, Little brother, are you okay? I'm okay. I'm used to it. Yin Nuoshing shook his head and lied. After all, it was his first time coming into contact with this situation. Among these people, only Ziyin and Ming could figure out what was going on. The stars are so dazzling. Although Ziyin knew, he couldn't help but complain. This made Yin Nuoshing feel a little helpless. As time passed, the light on his body seemed to become brighter. It was obviously a glimmer, but it was very bright. At night, Divine Sky City was still full of vitality. Along the ancient streets, many people could be seen bustling. Even the roads were glowing with fluorescent light. However, when these fluorescent lights came into contact with a pair of feet, they would rush to that person's body. The bright roads suddenly became dim. I become a light-absorbing insect. Seeing this scene, Yin Nuoshing let out a sigh of relief. The power of the stars kept entering his body. Although he was already refining it, his body was getting brighter and brighter. Wherever I go, I attract attention. Stopping in front of the drunken immortal lake, the people at the lakeside couldn't help but turn around to look. Seeing this, Ziyin couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, she was wearing Yin Nuoshing's black hat. After all, her appearance was also very shocking. Coming to the drunken immortal lake, she might be said to be looking for trouble. Are you blaming me? Yin Nuoshing shook his head helplessly. At this moment, there were already many people at the lakeside. Moreover, they were all young people. Feeling the light behind them, they would turn their heads strangely and look at Yin Nuoshing strangely before turning their heads back again. By the lakeside, flowers and plants were flourishing. The silver-blue moonlight poured down from the sky, enveloping the entire lake. The surface of the lake reflected the cold radiance, hazy and beautiful. On the lake, fog drifted. Dozens of boats were drifting aimlessly. On each boat, there was a beautiful girl standing gracefully. Her dress fluttered in the wind, and the sound of the guqin was melodious. Further away, dragon boats and pavilions intertwined with the moonlight to create a colorful brilliance. In the sky above the lake, a huge colorful cloud drifted, and colorful light shone through the mist. The misty light weaved into a light curtain, and it looked like a divine realm. The lighting effect is not bad. Yin Nuoshing nodded. The atmosphere was created quite well. It seemed like the top 3 rankings were made up. People look at beauties, you look at the light. Hearing this, Ziyin rolled her eyes. I can't help it. I look at beauties every day. Now, there aren't many beauties left. I can only look at the light. Yin Nuoshing shrugged, sighed, and said without skipping a beat. After that, he looked at Ziyin with a smile. Seeing that Ziyin rolled her eyes at him with embarrassment, he smiled proudly. He was quite interested in flirting with girls. Of course, on a whim. Little brother, when you see the real person later, you have to be careful. Don't fall into their trap. Looking at the drunken immortal lake, Lu Yi smiled silently. Oh! Yin Nuoxing let out an ambiguous laugh. With his hands behind his back, he narrowed his eyes and stared at the fog. What? Do you know how to charm people? That's not it. It's just that the previous owner of the drunken immortal building made all the young elites fall for her and forget to return. Not to mention the current Shu Yin. She's known as one of the most beautiful girls in the northern wasteland. Of course, that's not including the one from your family. Lu Yi stared at the two of them and smiled. I already said it's not like that. Hearing this teasing sentence, Yun Nuoxing and Ziyin blushed at the same time. The way they spoke in unison made them feel that they couldn't explain themselves. TSK. Brother Yun is our role model. Seeing this, Lu Yi smiled and patted Yun Nuoxing's shoulder. I'll fight it out with you. Yun Nuoxing flew into a rage out of humiliation. Splash! While the few of them were fooling around, the sound of water splashing suddenly came from the lake. Everyone quickly looked over and saw a jade boat carrying fresh flowers land on the surface of the water. The boat was shrouded in rainbow light. At the same time, the other zither sounds on the lake stopped at the same time. Just as he was about to turn around and leave with his people, Yun Nuoxing seemed to suddenly think of something. She tapped the silver ring on her ring finger lightly, and then ran to the lake. Immortal energy surged, and a bright light burst out from the ring, making Yun Nuoxing, who was already eye-catching, even more eye-catching, crash. The light surged for a moment. When everyone was dazzled by the light slowly dissipated. With a loud sound like a wave, a huge silver-white dragon boat suddenly appeared on the lake. The surface was inlaid with countless jewels. Even the dragon head was holding a bright pearl the size of a head in its mouth. It looked extremely luxurious. Moreover, it was countless times more expensive than the boat sold here. Ship. Seeing this scene, not only Yin Nuoxing and the others, but the countless onlookers around were all dumbfounded. They all stared at the giant ship with wide eyes and swallowed hard. Such a huge ship. How much did it cost to build it? Dragon Shin silver. It's Dragon Shin silver. Suddenly, someone shouted loudly, as if he had recognized the material of the ship. The crowd, which had been quiet for a moment, became excited again. Yin Nuoxing was shocked. Dragon Shin silver? I think it's a level 11 material. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a long time before he found the name in the database. Then, his expression changed slightly. This used a ship's worth of Dragon Shin silver? It seemed like he was in trouble. Let's go. Before the crowd could react, Yin Nuoxing hurriedly threw Ziyin and the others onto the ship. Then, he drove the Dragon Shin silver into the fog. On the other hand, the unusually calm crowd laughed helplessly in their hearts. Any material above level 10 had its own spirituality and would recognize its owner. Once it was used by a person, unless that person agreed, no one could take it away from that person. Naturally, no one had any bad intentions. When they saw Yin Nuoxing running so fast, they naturally understood that he had misunderstood. Everyone could only laugh helplessly. Even if they couldn't take it away, they could at least take a look. Why did he run so fast? Of course, Yin Nuoxing didn't know. Chapter 249. I seem to have done something incredible. The hull of the ship was submerged in the clouds. Only then did Yin Nuoxing heave a sigh of relief. He patted his chest with all his might, as if he had just escaped death. After a while, he let out a bitter laugh. What was this? He had to check the things that Xian Yin gave him in the future before he took them out. Otherwise, if he took out something rare, he would attract a lot of jealousy. Little star, you have no manners at all. What are you so anxious for? Are you afraid that someone will eat you up? Seeing him heave a sigh of relief, Z laughed in annoyance and said, Materials above level 10 all have unique spirituality and will recognize their owners. You can't snatch them away. You should have been more calm just now. How would I know? You didn't say so earlier. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but roll his eyes. You didn't ask. Also, this ship is probably not only this big. It should be much bigger in its original state. I guess your sister, Xian Yin, gave it to you to use when you went to the EC. I didn't expect you to take it out just to see a beauty, Ziyi said, and suddenly started to tease him. Go away. I'm not interested in these places. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. On the lake, there were many ships. Yin Nuashing's ship could be said to be a giant that appeared out of nowhere. Even the golden dragon ships in the distance were not as big as this ship. The abrupt size made many people below wonder where this big shot came from. Little brother, look at that dragon ship. Lu Yi suddenly reached out and pointed at a golden ship in the distance. On it, a young man in a golden robe stood with his hands behind his back. When he saw their ship, he looked at it with a little surprise and then looked away. That's the god of the golden temple, Jin Heng. At the mention of this name, Yin Nuashing suddenly thought of Jin Wang and Jin Ing and the others who were dragged back for special training. He wondered how they were doing. Oh, I met an acquaintance. Looking around, Lu Yi suddenly shrank her neck and looked as if she had seen a ghost. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. Liao Tinga's men? Yin Nuashing guessed after thinking for a while. Yeah, he's Liao Tinga's godson, the next pavilion master. I can't get along with him. Lu Yi scratched his head and smiled. Liao Tinga is also a powerful force. Although they can't be compared to the primordial families and the divine halls, they can't be underestimated. To be able to stand in the divine sky city for so many years, they naturally have their own abilities. No one from the ancient clans came. Yin Nuashing looked around, not knowing which one was the future pavilion master of Liao Tinga he was talking about. After looking around, he still didn't see anyone familiar. You wouldn't know even if you're here. In fact, most people know about these 8 forces, but there's very little information about them. The Golden Shrine is different. More people know about them, so I can recognize Jin Heng at a glance. But there is no such person among the 9 heroes. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but mutter in his heart. He often saw the 9 people from Yaohua, but he had never seen this so-called God's son. As they were talking, the boat stopped. They looked around and saw that their dragon Xian Silver was the largest among all the boats. It surrounded a flower boat in the center. The sound of a zither was ethereal, and the flower petals were fluttering in the wind. 7-colored light gathered on Chu Ilian, as if all the light in the world was condensed. It was incomparably sacred. Endless light gathered in his sight. Chu Ilian seemed to be saying something, but Yin Nuashing couldn't hear it clearly. Vague and unclear sounds echoed in his ears, but he could hear them. Slightly stunned, Yin Nuashing turned around and saw Lu Yi and Wang Chen's excited faces, as if they had heard something that made them excited. However, Lu Yi couldn't hear anything and thought it was tinnitus. Just as he was about to pat his ears, his vision suddenly became a little blurry. In his mind, a scene was constantly switching with what he was seeing now, as if 2 pictures were switching rapidly. Gradually, like a pool of water, chaotic and turbulent. After a long time, his vision was fixed on a picture. It was strange and gorgeous, and seemed unreal. A raging fire ignited on the surface of the water. Clouds of black smoke floated on the surface of the water, condensing into black clouds in the sky. They were illuminated by the endless fire, turning into an orange-red color. Multicolored light bloomed in the center of the smoke. The colorful energy fog turned into countless ripples in the air like clouds and mist, covering the entire line of sight. The hot wind hit him. Looking at this scene, Yin Nuashing was slightly stunned. He lowered his head, and with the help of the orange fire, he could see that the brown deck was no longer the silver-white deck. It seemed to be in a different place. Sigh. Yin Nuashing was already used to such a situation. He knew that this scene was caused by the remaining memory fragments in his mind. It had happened in his dream before. Different from the bloody sky in his dream, this was on the surface of the sea. The endless fire seemed to be burning the world to ashes. He subconsciously wanted to call Zai out. His heart was tranquil. There were no words. There was no familiar laughter. There was no response from anyone. "Can't you hear me?" Letting out a long sigh, Yun Nuashing looked at the seven-colored cloud that looked like an auspicious cloud. It contained a strange energy that he had never seen before. It should belong to some kind of strange energy body, and it didn't have any life energy. He tried his best to move his feet, but they seemed to be stuck to the ground. Even the other parts of his body couldn't move. He was like a human-shaped wooden sculpture. After struggling for a while, Yun Nuashing could only sigh. The recovered memory fragments were a little strange. Every time he wanted to move, he couldn't. He was like a marionette, passively watching this scene. Rumble. The entire world reverberated with the sound of the earth. Even the air was slightly vibrating. Countless spatial cracks appeared in the sky, like giant mouths that could devour people. What was revealed below was not a pitch-black void, but a golden place. A place formed by golden ripples. The smoke in the center of the lake slowly dispersed. A colorful light bloomed. The dazzling light shone on his eyes, but he didn't feel any discomfort. Yin Nuashing was stunned. He wanted to move closer to take a look. He moved a little and smiled bitterly. He forgot that he couldn't move. Soft footsteps came from beside him, and a blurry figure slowly walked forward. He couldn't see who it was, but from the figure, he could guess that it was a girl. She was dragging a huge black sword in her hand, which left a string of sparks on the deck. Her hair fluttered behind her. The girl seemed to be looking at the colorful light in front of her. She said softly, "Do you still want to keep this world?" The cold voice quietly echoed, but Yin Nuashing could hear the gentleness in it. This voice itself sounded quite contradictory, but the content scared him so much that he broke out in cold sweat. Even if I say I hate this world, if you don't want it, I'll destroy it with you." The helpless voice sounded softly. It was still cold and gentle. When it reached Yun Nuashing's ears, it warmed his heart. However, it scared him so much that he almost jumped up. Before he could react, the girl raised the huge black sword above her head. She paused for a moment, then slashed fiercely at the colorful light. A sword aura shot out from the tip of the sword. It expanded to millions of feet and swallowed the colorful light in one gulp. The entire world shook violently, as if it was about to collapse. Yin Nuashing was shocked. He reached out to block it, but the scene in front of him suddenly changed. The black smoke disappeared, and the flames that covered the water were also extinguished. The colorful light was no longer there. He reached out and placed his hand on Xian's shoulder. Xing Xing. After being patted on the shoulder, Xian gently turned around. She saw Yin Nuashing's blank face. His eyes were extremely empty, as if he had lost his soul. Xian couldn't help but call out. A clear and melodious voice sounded beside his ear, and it immediately pulled Yin Nuashing back to reality. He looked at Xian's adorable and puzzled face and laughed awkwardly. He retracted his hand, shook his head, and said with a smile, "My hand is cramping. It's nothing." Hearing this, Xian glanced at him suspiciously. She then looked at him carefully and didn't find anything unusual. Only then did she pout and roll her eyes at him. She slowly turned her head around and looked at the palace, where people were continuously entering. She asked, "Xing Xing, are we going in?" "Zai, what happened just now?" Yin Nuashing frowned. The memory fragments he saw in the past didn't seem to connect with what he saw today. "What do you mean, what happened?" Zai was stunned for a moment. She didn't understand what he was talking about. However, as soon as she finished speaking, someone as intelligent as her instantly understood what happened. She knew everything about Yin Nuashing, although she was also listening to the music and felt that her body and mind were calm. She also sensed that something was wrong with Yin Nuashing. However, she didn't say much and just thought that he was in a daze. Now that she thought about it, it seemed that something was wrong. "You just regained your memory fragments? What did you see?" Zai hurriedly asked when she saw Yun Nuashing's situation. "Fire." The water surface seemed to be on fire. A rainbow-colored light enveloped the entire world. A girl stood beside me, and said that she wanted to destroy this world with me. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment. The memory fragments this time seemed a little strange to him, but he didn't understand what exactly they were trying to express to him. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a little resentful. If you want to put in memory fragments, why don't you put in more coherent ones, one by one? What exactly do you want me to understand? I don't remember. I don't know. What's inside the rainbow-colored light? Zai sighed and asked again. I can't see clearly. I can't see clearly who that girl is either. Yin Nuashing shook his head. Wait, rainbow-colored light? Zai suddenly exclaimed, scaring Yin Nuashing so much that his heart twitched. He hurriedly patted his chest. After catching his breath, he smiled bitterly and said, Don't be so surprised. That's right, it's the rainbow-colored light. After that, he recounted what he had seen in detail. After Ziyi finished listening, she furrowed her brows tightly. Rainbow-colored light? Destroy the world? Zai frowned and kept muttering these words. Yin Nuashing was stunned when he heard it. Phew! After a long time, Zai exhaled heavily and murmured, Do you still remember the last bit of consciousness we saw in the sea of consciousness? I think so. What core was it talking about? What? Yin Nuashing asked hesitantly. I discovered the core of the world. That's what it said. Could it be that the rainbow-colored light is what the owner of that voice wanted to reveal? Zai said in a serious voice. The core of the world? Yin Nuashing tilted his head. What was that? The core of the world? That sounded so surreal. Besides, there was no precise definition of the world. I'm curious about that black sword. Yin Nuashing sighed and shook his head. The core of the world was too much of a headache. He didn't want to think about it. Speaking of the black sword, Zai suddenly smiled mysteriously and said jokingly, I really want to ask, why is it a girl again? Little star, how many girls do you have around you? You womanizer. It wasn't hard to imagine that her pretty face looked very cute because of that smile. What does that have to do with me? Yin Nuashing's face twitched, and he retorted, I don't even know who that girl is. Who said that she has a relationship with me? Maybe she's just a lover. Yes, a lover. That's right, that must be it. Then why don't you have a lover? Zai asked with a smile when he heard this. How would I know? Yin Nuashing's eyes twitched. He was a little angry. How could he blame him for not having good relationships with people? Star. Just as Yin Nuashing was about to argue with Zai, Zian angrily slapped him and said, Don't ignore me. What did you just say? Yin Nuashing only came back to his senses after being slapped on the chest. He was stunned for a moment and asked in confusion when he saw the girl's angry face. You. Seeing his innocent look, Zian was so angry that she lost her temper. This guy left her here for 5 minutes and didn't even know what happened? Chu Lian finished playing and invited everyone in to discuss. Lu Yi and the others went in. What should we do? Seeing Zian's angry and aggrieved look, Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. He suddenly understood what happened and helplessly shook his head. He also felt that it was better to clarify some things so that there wouldn't be any misunderstandings in the future. They still had a long way to go in the future. Zian, let me tell you something. Thinking of this, Yin Nuashing patted her head and softly told her everything, including what had just happened. After listening to him, Zian felt a little worried. Mei Mao looked at him carefully, blinked, and said, Did I disturb you just now? No, it's not that. Seeing her worried look, Yin Nuashing smiled indifferently and shook his head. The past was the past, and the present was the present. Even if one pursued the past, they couldn't neglect the present. Then will I have a few more brothers in the future? In her arms, Ming tugged at Yin Nuashing's clothes and asked curiously. Cough. Yin Nuashing almost spat out a mouthful of blood. No, that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.